Good night, and welcome to the November 15, 2022 special meeting of the Tiverton Planning Board. And I'd like to begin with a roll call of our members to establish a quorum. So I'll start with Peter Bramonti, who's not yet here, but we've just heard from him and he's on the road. Rosemary Eva.
Present.
Janice Gomes.
Present.
Patricia Hilton, who was sworn in today.
Present.
Adam Raposa.
Present.
Christina Shea is not here, and we haven't heard from her. Amanda Souza Vieira is not here. Christopher Shriver.
Present.
And of course, I'm Stu Hardy, the chair. I'd like to also introduce our legal counsel, Todd Romano, sitting on my left, and also Ed Rotella, who is our land use clerk. Ashley Sweet is not able to be with us tonight. She has an engagement elsewhere. She's our interim planner and administrative officer to the planning board. And also we have our consulting engineer, Nathan Michael. I always want to say Michael Nathan. Nathan is with the firm of Weston and Sampson. And also I'd like to give a special welcome to a brand new member of the planning board, Tricia Hilton. And many of you probably know Tricia. She was active on the Conservation Commission. She was very active on the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee some years ago. And more recently, she served on town council, including a stint as president of town council. So congratulations on your appointment last night. Delighted to have you with us. And also I'd like to congratulate Adam and Peter in absence for their reappointment to the planning board last night. Thank you for your interest in that. So I'd like to ask the applicant, which is Souza Road Condominiums, Trilogy Tiverton LLC, if they would like to take themselves out of order and be number 2 on the agenda while we're waiting for Bill Landry, or would you like to just come forward and begin without Bill? It's up to you.
Chris Duhamel, Dupree Engineering. I'm willing to follow the board's direction. If you wish us to proceed, we're ready. If you
Oh, okay, you're ready?
if you would want us to wait, we can.
Oh, no. If you're fine to go. And while you're bringing your team up, I see this is Chris Duhamel, who is with Dupree Engineering, and I think everybody knows Jeremy Lake by now of Union Studios. He's done a lot of work here. And also I see Mr. Raposa, who has done some planning consulting for applicants. And I believe there's somebody here from no, you're not with this particular, you're not part of this team. So
I could introduce our team if that's appropriate.
Why don't you do that?
Well, I'd like to, just before you even do that, I'd just like to say that this is a major land development. It's also a comprehensive permit project because it involves low and moderate income affordable housing. It's on nearly 10 acres, roughly near the corner of Main Road and Souza Road, with a little piece carved out, but roughly that 10-acre lot that used to be the Trilogy, which we used to call the Trilogy lot, and before that it was owned by Starwoods, and before that it hosted oil tanks for Northeast Petroleum. And this particular project came before us just about a year ago. It was November 16 of last year with a concept review plan. And I think those of us who were at that meeting were very impressed with it, and so we didn't see a lot of issues. We thought the concept looked pretty darn good. Of course, there's going to be little modifications here and there, but so having said that, by way of background, Chris, I invite you to introduce the team, and I see Mr. Bill Landry of Bush and Kavanaugh has joined us, so if he would like, he can introduce the team. Yes, this is a master plan review tonight. We've had the concept plan a year ago. So this is the very beginning of the formal process of evaluation, of review. So we're at the very beginning of the master plan stage, and it's appropriate for the applicant to just kind of lay out the project as it now stands, so that we all understand it, and then we can all ask questions after Mr. Landry's team does that.
Hey, Mr. Hardy, thanks for giving me a little time here to get settled. Sorry for holding you up. We're very excited to be here tonight on this project. I think you know the site well. I'll make some introductions. You know Jeremy Lake, the architectural team, Don Huggins, and Jim Barrows. Mr. Huggins and Mr. Barrows are right under the camera there. We have Ed Pimentel, the land use expert. Chris Duhamel is our engineer. Oxford has this property under a purchase and sale agreement. They've been developing this plan for about 2.5 years. We've got just over an 8-acre site there. Some significant aspects of the site before I highlight the development proposal. The 2018 comprehensive plan really focused on this site, as I think you already know, and gave it a more robust underscoring of its potential to assist in meeting the town's long-range housing needs, particularly the affordable housing needs and housing in general. It was one of 3 commercial districts created and contemplated by the comp plan that had been created as commercial, general commercial, in which multifamily was allowed. That all happened in 2014. In 2018, the comp plan focused on this particular area shown there in yellow, which had been identified as one of these general commercial areas, and really underscored its potential for multifamily housing at densities comparable to the nearest residential zone, which is R60. It's actually the Tiverton Heights project, and the densities.
Cassett Reserve.
Exactly, the Cassett Reserve. Much more appropriately now named. The comp plan focused on densities, different possible densities for this area, and identified specifically, let's see what I have here. Identified this area as moderate density in one place and high density development in another place, emphasizing multifamily, but noting that the size of the density bonus, that the actual density would be based on a variety of different factors. It would, in the first instance, be proportionate to the infrastructure availability. That was the highest ranked factor in determining whether higher densities are available. Is there public water? Is there sewer? The comp plan notes that the big limiting factor in Tiverton is not any prejudice against affordable housing. There is none. Rather, it's the limitations on expanding infrastructure to the southern end of the town. And so, even more robustly than in the pre-2018 comp plan, North Tiverton and this area north of Souza Road in particular were identified as highly suitable areas for utilizing the land that is available for all of those purposes that I've mentioned. Limiting factor is availability of public infrastructure. They want to make sure there are no soil constraints in order to get higher density. Is it in a natural heritage area? Is it a site that's the subject of hazardous waste? Since most of these, or many of these sites were part of former petroleum facilities. And all of these, in this case, point in favor of the highest of densities on this particular site. We've got a service letter for water from the fire district. We've got a service letter for sewer from Tiverton Wastewater District, and a determination that this allocation of gallonage, about 24,000 gallons, is well within the available expansion of gallonage within the system under the interlocal participation agreement with the city of Fall River. It can easily meet the sewer demands of the project. And the other thing that pointed to this site was that pointed to higher densities and suitable development on the site for affordable housing was to have some commercial element. This is a general commercial zone. And the comp plan called for all of the things I've just said to meet the needs of the town for housing, but it also said on these sites in particular, the general commercial sites in this area, we're looking for a balance, not just housing, as is the case with the preserve. We're looking for commercial elements so that the base zoning of the site can be recognized and utilized, and the town's commercial interests in economic development are served at the same time. So, we think we hit all of the bases that point to this type of project on this area, on this lot. And what's really striking is that it's not an attempt to jam in a lot of things. As you can see, there are two distinct park-like open space areas worked into this site. There are two entrances, one from Souza Road, one from Main Road, that provide for different types of options. It does seem to us to be what is sort of intended to be harmonious with everything that area is. It's a commercial area, it's a multifamily housing area, it's an area where people need recreation to be able to walk to and have on site, and it's not overloaded in any respect. Jeremy will talk about the different housing types and commercial proposals, commercial area proposals we have for the site. That's another thing that's emphasized in the comp plan now, is a diversity of housing types in addition to a diversity of both, involving both commercial and residential uses. We're going to be introducing just over 12,000 square feet of commercial space at the entrance to the property on Main Road. There's an entrance that will go right into that 12,350 square foot area. And then wrapping around to the other entrance on Souza Road, there'll be a 4,500 square foot restaurant to serve this area and traffic passing through and developments yet to be built. And in addition to that restaurant, there will be 4 mixed-use buildings over to the east end of the lot closest to the preserve. There will be 2,000 square feet of commercial space in those mixed-use buildings and 9 residential flats, condominium style flats, all 2 bedrooms, nothing greater than a 2-bedroom residential unit in this entire development. And then, so there'll be 36 units altogether of those apartment style flats, and then another 10 residential units that are part of a townhouse type style grouping of buildings. There'll be 3 live-work units and 7 townhouse units, approximately 1,300 square foot units. Again, nothing more than a 2-bedroom unit. The parking is at or in excess of the spaces called for under the ordinance. Is 166 parking spaces distributed in a diverse way across the entire site. There are some waivers that are being requested here, none of them particularly unusual. One is that the actual provision of the letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing be provided during the course of the master plan process before decision. That's something that the board did in the case of the preserve, and it is becoming increasingly common in municipalities across the state for that to come through after the project has been introduced to a planning board. There's been some discussion about it because in the early stages we found that there have been some changes to the project plans that have impacted the letter of eligibility and made it more accurate to what the boards actually vote on. I mentioned the wastewater district for sewer, the Stone Bridge Fire District for water. There's also a Tiverton Fire District letter to the effect that fire service can be provided from that district. So having provided that introduction, I think the order of presentation that we would prefer is to have Jeremy provide the overview of the architectural and site design on the Union Studio type plans that are less busy than civil engineering plans, and really provide a crisper view of how the site is proposed to be laid out. We have Chris Duhamel from Dupree to get into the civil plan set, which is a separate plan set. They're both small plan sets, but they are distinct, showing the same property. Chris's obviously focuses on stormwater management, on utilities, existing conditions, unique topographical conditions and so forth of the site, the entrances, the exits, and there's also a landscape plan that's required by your checklist. It's also part of the civil engineering package that Chris can take us through. We have Paul Bannon of Bader Engineering that has prepared a traffic report. We know how interested the board is in traffic issues in this area in particular. You've seen a lot of analysis about the intersections of Main Road and Souza Road, and also Souza Road and Fish Road, and those are the 2 intersections that Mr. Bannon and his firm focused on. They did traffic analysis. They took into consideration background growth. They took into consideration the reserve being constructed next to it and the traffic loads associated with that. And you'll hear some familiar presentation that's quite consistent, in some ways even more positive than the traffic information you heard from your own consultant and from the traffic experts associated with the preserve. We know one of the questions you might ask may have something to do with sidewalks, and that is not going to be a surprise to this team, and there's been some thought put into it, and I think we understand that unlike the preserve, this project is actually in your pedestrian-friendly zone. It's contemplated by the comp plan, the 2018 comp plan, and we understand the importance of that particular priority to the board. And we have Ed Pimentel here, who has provided a report on comprehensive plan consistency. He's covered in more detail some of the things that I started out with tonight on the town's vision for this particular parcel in terms of housing, affordable housing, and mixed use. And he'll go through that in a general way. I don't know how much time you have for us tonight, or how much time you want to allocate to the public, as you sometimes do. I'll tell you that if time is short, Mr. Pimentel's report is very self-explanatory and concise, and sort of speaks for itself. But he's here tonight and happy and available to present.
We'll play that by ear when we get to it.
Sounds good. So unless there are any questions of me, I would invite Jeremy to take us through the architectural set.
Can I just ask one question? There's only one waiver you're asking?
No, there are a couple, and there's a deferral of the letter of eligibility requested. There's also a deferral of the required certification by the building official with respect to the access to the building official makes an advisory letter that now is to be provided at the master plan stage. We're not sure a waiver is required because at the master plan stage would seem to include that period before the board actually acts on it. But that was a waiver requested out of an abundance of caution. The same thing for the required determination by the Department of Public Works that as to whether soil and erosion control is required. And that is also something that's supposed to be presented at the master plan stage. There was a waiver requested with respect to any requirement for RIDEM subdivision suitability, but that's really not applicable since we're in a municipal stormwater sewer service area. And there was a request made that the street light detail also be deferred to the preliminary plan stage of review. Now, we did have a certificate of completeness subject to those waiver requests, and I believe I've covered them all.
Okay, thanks.
So, are you ready to hear Jeremy?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jeremy Lake with Union Studio Architecture and Community Design. I'm just going to quickly introduce the project. Again, I think some of you saw it a year ago. It's fairly similar to what it was then. On the screen, we're showing you the project location. Again, I think you guys all know where it is. Souza Road, Main Road, where those two intersect. It's not technically that little parcel at the corner, but it sort of wraps around that parcel here. And everything east of this line is what we were talking about just 2 weeks ago. So it's this parcel here identified in yellow. I'm going to jump between packages just because sometimes they have better base information to share. This is what it looks like today. There's not really much of anything on it other than some scrubby little bushes and some trees around the edges, but it's largely sort of an open field at this point in time. although it does have quite a bit of grade. So I'll jump back here. The blue is our boundary line. As Bill referenced, we have a small parcel that's actually down at the main road level. So we have an entrance there and a building proposed there. But then you can see there's about 30 feet of grade change through this hillside. And so there really wasn't a feasible way of connecting the top and the bottom. So in some ways, we really thought of that as its own little out parcel. Really, the majority of the project is then up at this higher tabled area. Again, at the back, there's a hill that's anywhere 10 to 15 feet, depending on where you are. There is this small little change in grade here that we're going to grade out, so that really doesn't sort of impact anything. But it's also worth noting along Souza Road, depending on where you are, if you get down this lower corner, you're a good 15 to 20 feet, of grade change. And the further you come up, the closer you get to grade. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the access to the site and why we tied in at that location there. Jumping back to the architectural package. So this is our proposed concept. Chris's engineered plans are ever so slightly different. I'll point out where, but generally the concept still holds true. The idea was to have, again, this lower parcel where we have a little bit of flat land. We'll have a single commercial building, 2,400 square feet, with its own parking, access, trash, everything it would need sort of to act independently. And the idea here was to try to, provide a structure that would be sort of in keeping with the scale of the sorts of structures you would expect that you already find along Main Road, with the parking tucked to the side, because it's really the only way it works with the grading. The upper portion of the site is accessed off of Souza Road. In this preliminary concept, we had the access point here, where it was just sort of conveniently tying into our internal circulation. You'll see in Chris's plan, kind of the one big shift that happened over time is we decided to try to shift this drive over, call it 60, 70, 80 feet. Chris's plans will show that shift. To get that to work, all we did is we took the couple buildings here in the back, sort of scooched them all over 15 feet. That let us take these two buildings and sort of scooch them back enough to get that drive to work. So again, the overall diagram is still very much the same. Bill referenced a couple of different building types we have that I'll show you in more detail in a moment. But along sort of the eastern and the beginning of the northern edge of the sort of central space here, we have a series of mixed-use buildings. These are roughly 3,000 square foot footprint. 2,000 square feet of that is commercial space, which is this darker orange color. There's a single unit on the ground floor here. And then when you go up to the second floor, there's 4 units. Go up to the third floor, there's 4 units. So that's how you get 9 units plus the commercial in each of those 4 buildings. So 36 units represented by those 4 buildings there. We have a single restaurant parcel here, about 4,500 square feet. So again, it has its sort of entry and front facing into this communal green space we have in the middle. But we've also accommodated and expected and planned for a lot of outdoor seating that would also be on the backside, because not surprisingly, with the amount of grade change you have here, you actually have really wonderful views out, up and over the corner parcel. No matter what sort of happens here, you can see down from here. And then similarly, as you make your way further into the parcel, we have a couple of townhouse units in this location. The orange being what we're referring to as live work units. Again, I'll show those in more detail in a moment. The idea is that there's a small commercial space underneath one of those units, and then 3 fairly typical townhouse units attached to that. And then we have this large, what we're calling the overlook park, down here at the end. The idea being that this is available to everyone that would utilize this space to come down. Again, with that 30 feet of grade change through here, standing here, you have really commanding, wonderful views out towards the water up there as well. So the plan was thought about a combination of how views are oriented, but how we also create these shared common public spaces, how we distribute the parking. This green helps break up that parking field, parking in front and behind some of these structures. The residential, we imagine, will predominantly park in the back. The commercial will predominantly park in the front. And we have a series of sidewalks that connect all of those things together, certainly internally. At the time, we did not draw a walk along Souza Road, but we know that's going to be a point of conversation that we welcome talking through. And so let me keep going and showing you what that looks like. So here is a perspective view and aerial rendering. So Main Road is down here in the lower left-hand corner. That's that single commercial building down right on Main Road with its own parking area here. Coming up Souza Road, again accessing the site directly off of Souza. You have those 4 mixed-use buildings rendered to look like 2.5-story structures that are 2 of the 3 sides of that green, with the single-story restaurant in this location here. Again, you can start to get a sense of the outdoor seating that could be facing out over towards the water. And then the transition to the townhouse and live-work units that kind of continue down the street, wrap the street, front on the Overlook Park with the gazebo with the views out towards the water. In terms of the buildings themselves, this is one of those typical mixed-use buildings, 2.5 stories, building height 35 feet, which I think was the max allowed per the zoning. On the ground floor, again, call it 3/4 of the ground floor is commercial space. You can see here we've rendered that with a series of storefronts, so it could be either one space or subdivided into 2 or 3 spaces, depending on tenants. But we've also included a single residential unit at the ground floor. We did that so that we could provide for some number of accessible units without having to go up the stairs. Obviously, that would make them inaccessible. So we included a handful of those, one of those per building. And then upstairs, as you go up, there's 2 sets of stairs, so each stair delivers you up to a pair of units on either side, a pair of units on either side, on both the 2nd floor and on the 3rd floor. For the townhouse and live-work types, again, the idea here is that one of those units could have a commercial space or will have a commercial space in the ground floor. See here the little storefront for that. Not a particularly large space. I think it was in like the 500 to 600 square foot range. So think of that as an attorney's office or a real estate office or something along those lines. I don't think that would be a store or a shop or a restaurant, anything along those lines. Certainly a nice we call them live works, the idea being that maybe someone could live upstairs and work downstairs, which obviously became something we all became very familiar with recently. And then the 2 other units would be fairly typical townhouse units, living, dining, kitchen on the ground floor with 2 bedrooms above. In this particular case, the residential unit would have its own entry, go up the stairs, and then that unit would be on probably the entirety of the 2nd floor of this particular unit, maybe taking advantage of the half-story that we also have built in here as well. But as Bill mentioned, no unit being larger than a 2-bedroom unit. And then last but not least, this is just an idea of what the restaurant could look like. So this is the side facing the internal little community green space. So an idea of sort of a primary entry point, maybe an area with some outdoor seating under a canopy. Certainly also understanding that some part of the restaurant ends up becoming the kitchen, the service areas. And so it tries just to represent the various uses that might occur there. We did not draw the other smaller commercial building, but the idea being it would be of a similar character, just a slightly smaller structure. So I think that's everything from the architectural plan. I should probably pass it over to Chris. The one thing I did just want to point out quickly, as I mentioned, our drawings again had the drive in this location. Ultimately, we decided it made more sense from a grading and I think visibility standpoint to actually shift it further east. So like I said, we just shifted the buildings around a little bit to help accommodate that drive coming in and through. You want to introduce some of them? I can either take questions on what I've talked about so far, or Chris can keep going and just talk through the rest of the site considerations.
Yeah, let's have Chris take it now, and then when everybody's given their presentation, we'll open it up for questions and comments.
Okay. Again, my name is Chris Duhamel, a professional engineer and land surveyor with Dupree Engineering. We've been working with Union Studios and Beta Engineering on optimizing the plan that we introduced a year ago, as the chair has pointed out. The design of the site has been advanced to the point where we have a Class 1 survey now, we have an accurate topographic survey, we have a wetland delineation completed to really understand the site constraints. We've also done a utility survey. The site is serviced by public sewer, by public water, and we, as Attorney Landry has said, there's been will-serve capacity letters received from all utility companies so that we have assurance that we can go forward beyond master plan. The plan that we have in front of you is the layout of the site as Jeremy has designed it. We worked with Beta Engineering, Paul Bannon and Herman Perrault of Beta Engineering to locate the most optimum access off of Souza Road to the project development site. It's moved quite a bit on Souza Road, and this location you see at the most westerly area of the southwesterly area of the site provides for the minimum amount of grading needed to access the site, and provides for the most optimum site distance for safety for ingress and egress onto Souza Road. So that's how that location was chosen from those perspective. We also presented this to the fire marshal, Lieutenant Murphy, who has looked at the entrance to the site, looked at the turning movements of the ladder truck, and have his approval on the access to the site and the turning throughout the site. There's 100 foot of one-way in, and then from that point, it goes in any direction for access throughout the site for fire safety. So that was another way to prove Jeremy's plan works. The grading through the site, which is a requirement of the master plan checklist, was completed. We've done a profile that shows grades, centerline grades ranging from 2% to 4% throughout.
Just closed your file for some reason.
So we're going to find it.
Is that it up top? No, that's fine. Is this it here?
Probably right there.
Error occurred.
Oh boy, I love computers. Let's get it off of this.
Yeah, it looks like it. I was trying to open it from somewhere else.
Which one is it? How about that?
Perfect.
So we're back in the game here. We've, as required by the master plan checklist, we've completed a profile throughout the site and a grading plan throughout the site, and we've minimized the amount of cuts and fills that are required to create the plateaus that are needed for the design. So we will work with the town engineer in Weston and Sampson and certainly the DEM when we get closer into the preliminary plan stage for this design. But the site is designed to accommodate the 9 buildings, the uses of the buildings. We've calculated the parking requirements. We've exceeded the parking requirements. Required is 154 spaces. We've provided for 172, and the necessary handicap parking is included within that number. For stormwater, we've shown a concept of a collection, the stormwater collection system routed to stormwater management areas that are conceptual in nature for this design. Of course, much more analysis is needed to prove out the size of the basins and the effectiveness of the basins. But at this master plan level, we are confident that these 3 areas that are shown in blue are all would accommodate the increase in stormwater. For the pedestrian access, we have 2,700 linear feet of pedestrian paths, as Jeremy has asked, designed, looping the open space areas that are within the courtyard of the entrance development and at the overlook to the west of the site. So it's created an optimum area for living and visiting and enjoying that overview, the long site views. We do have a landscape plan that is, again, conceptual at this point, but it shows the required shade trees throughout the parking area. It shows buffers to the abutting neighbors. It shows the ability to have the park integrated within the development itself, so that it is a real value to what is being proposed. We asked for a waiver to complete the lighting plan until the preliminary plan stage. We do have a lighting plan concept now that was recently received, and with a goal of having dark sky lighting where there is no bleeding of of lighting beyond the property boundary. It's all within the areas that are needed for the walking trails and the building access. So that's a design requirement that we'll prove at the preliminary plan stage. I think that's everything I can bring forward now. If there's questions, I can certainly answer them. The environmental review is something that we're very well aware of, and we're working with Sage Environmental and the RIDM. That would be a condition of the preliminary plan stage to show. We do have a letter now from DEM that said this property is appropriate for residential use, and we're working under that guide. But with that, I'll wait for any questions.
Thank you, Chris. And so perhaps we can hear from...
Our traffic engineer is Herman Peralt from Beta.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Herman Peralta. I'm a senior traffic engineer with Beta Group out of the Lincoln, Rhode Island office. I'm a registered professional engineer. I'm pretty familiar with the project. I know Paul Bannon's name has been thrown around, but I'm really familiar with the project. I actually worked on the report. I'm also familiar with the area. I live in Tiverton, so. So in order for us to assess the potential traffic impacts of the proposed mixed-use development and to prepare a traffic study, the following task was completed. One, we did an inventory of the physical characteristics of the servicing roadways. That includes Souza Road and Main Road. We collected traffic data, including obtaining record traffic volumes from a previous study that was completed within the project area. We also obtained crash data from the local police department to determine if there are any traffic-related safety issues within the project area. We estimated the trips that would be generated by the proposed mixed use using the ITE trip generation manual. And finally, we evaluated the existing and future conditions and made recommendations, if necessary, to provide safe and efficient access. As Jeremy and Chris had pointed out, we had coordinated the access on Souza Road to make sure that it has the required site distances. Just briefly going over the project area, which has been covered pretty well tonight, so I'm just going to skip that part, but I would like to just note that our main focus of the traffic study was along Souza Road, including at the intersections with Fish Road and Main Road, and also at the side driveway intersections. As it relates to the traffic volumes along the servicing roadways, we had collected traffic data back in January 2022. And we do understand the effects of the pandemic on the traffic. As such, what we've done is we obtained, record traffic volumes, which was collected back in December 2015 and also back in May 2019. So we took those three sets of data, the December 2015, the May 2019, and the January 2022, and compared them. And it was determined that the December 2015 traffic volumes overall had higher traffic volumes. So what we've done is we used the December 2015 traffic volumes to use as our base traffic volumes for our analysis. But to be more conservative in our traffic volumes, as you know, engineers are pretty conservative. We took that December 2015 traffic volumes and increased it 0.5% annually to try to estimate the 2022 traffic volumes. So based on that adjusted traffic volumes, we determined that Souza Road is estimated to service approximately 2,100 vehicles per day, which is pretty low on a collector road. In regards to the safety analysis part of the study, we had investigated the geometry of the servicing roadways, again, Main Road and Souza Road, as it relates to safety. Specifically, we looked at the stopping site distances at the study intersections. Again, that includes Main Road, Souza Road, and then the site driveway intersections on Souza Road and Main Road, and determined that the study intersections provide more than adequate stopping site distances. Also, as part of our safety analysis, we did look at crash data, as I've previously mentioned. And we looked at a 3-year study period between 2017 and 2019 within the project area, again, just to see if there's any safety-related issues. And we determined from our crash analysis that the most frequent crashes were actually deer-related collisions along Main Road. So as such, we had recommended in our report that the state DOT, which has jurisdiction over Main Road, to provide, not additional, but advanced deer warning signs along Main Road between Route 24 and Cary Lane. Cary Lane is just south of the former Little Bear restaurant. Just briefly going over the trips and operations. The proposed mixed-use development, based on the different uses, is estimated to generate about 49 trips during the AM peak hour and about 147 trips during the afternoon peak hour. I think it's important to note that we were conservative in estimating the trips for the commercial space component. We had assumed that the over 12,000 square foot of commercial space would be retail, but as Jeremy had pointed out, some of these commercial spaces will be office, which significantly generates less traffic than what a retail use does. So based on the traffic volumes and in combination with the site-related traffic volumes from the proposed mixed-use development, our analysis found that the estimated increase in traffic resulting from the proposed mixed-use development will have a minor impact on overall operations along the servicing roadways, including at the study intersections that we looked at. It is anticipated that the study intersections will operate efficiently with no movements experiencing any excessive delays or queuing. In conclusion, based on the traffic data that we have collected on the servicing roadways and the analysis that we have completed as part of the study, the proposed mixed-use development will provide for safe and adequate access to a public street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pimentel, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Hardy, members of the planning board. This is probably like the 6th or 7th project that I've presented before this body in the last several years. Prior to that, I was actually your special zoning officer to the Tiverton Four Corners. So I've become well-versed in your comprehensive plan. I've also known the great desire of this community and your aspirations to realize affordable housing. So when I was reviewing your comprehensive plan, when I've been looking over the developments that I've worked on in this community and other developments, what's become very clear is that this community has 3 overarching goals. A, you want to generally protect the character of this neighborhood, of this community, the rural character of this community. That's been expressed to me on many occasions. Number 2, in so doing, how do we address A, our economic concerns, and B, our housing, and more importantly, our affordable housing concerns. And that's really, it's through all the elements of your comprehensive plan. To emphasize what Attorney Landry stated in his opening comments, this community knows that A, infrastructure is probably the key component to achieving success and to preserving the rural character. That's why you've kind of concentrated your efforts to develop kind of this North Tiverton area where the infrastructure is present, where you can accommodate both the balance and mixture of commercial success in your housing density, your affordable housing. And that's why I felt very confident that this development could meet those overarching goals. Another key component to that, though, is the self-sufficiency of the development. This community went to great lengths to craft the pedestrian-friendly district. Not only was it to make it, A, more pedestrian-friendly, but it was also to make it more self-sufficient from a perspective of a pedestrian and multimodal. And what we feel in this type of development on a small scale is that this will be self-contained. Individuals would take advantage of the commercial sources that are here and their uses. There's no need to get in a car if the services are already there. This has been proven time and time again, both historically, if you look at places like Wickford Village, Patuxent Village, and then areas that have been created like this, like on a larger scale, the South County Commons. Individuals who reside there take advantage of the services, and it brings down a reduction in the amount of traffic volumes, reduces the amount of vehicular need for vehicles, and it creates that pedestrian flavor, and hopefully it'll be a kind of a catalyst for the pedestrian district in general. You want that contained commercial and residential. And you know what also helps to do? It makes it economically feasible. And it helps to generate the economic base that this community so desires. So having stated that, I feel that this really meets all your goals and objectives. It provides an economic base, it provides much needed affordable housing, and I think it works towards your goals of trying to establish this pedestrian-friendly district, which has been a great desire of this community. I don't know if you have any questions? Oh, you know what, I know you have my report on the record, but I only get this one chance, and there were really two quotes right out of your comp plan that I thought said it all. And if I just want to put them into the record. So this is page 16 of your comp plan, residential growth, and it states, future residential growth, while providing for affordable housing opportunities throughout town, should consist of density compatible with the existing conditions, available infrastructure and varying housing styles in North Tiverton, and less dense and rural residential style developments in South Tiverton. And that was balanced with your Action 17. And you talk about to allow mixed-use residential where residential units may exist, multifamily units, small apartment buildings, the potential for residential units tied to infrastructure, particularly public sewer and water, equally important is to balance these zones represent prime commercial land. We must maintain a balance that recognizes our desire for business growth. I think this development hits on both those key points. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments, but I'd like to just ask Mr. Landry about two sort of procedural items that we should be thinking of. Firstly, it would be, I think, very helpful and move the process forward if you could put on paper the waivers that you would like the planning board to vote on. You've explained those tonight, but if you could put that into like a one-page memo to the planning board or to the planning office, then that would serve as the backup documentation and get everybody on the same page and make it easier for us to vote on a waiver for those items that you would like to defer from master plan to preliminary plan.
I'll do that.
Because I thought it was a very reasonable list myself, but I mean, the board itself will have to vote on it, and I think it would be good if you could do that.
What I'll probably, yeah, I've got that. Thank you, Chris. The Dupree Engineering narrative in the application package had an attachment A that actually lists the requested waivers. I can... No,
that's fine. Then I missed that. I missed that.
It was in the back of the document, and
right.
The document wasn't indexed at the beginning, so it is easy to miss, but it's very detailed as to everything that I mentioned and that Chris mentioned. It's a page and a half. It's a great resource.
Okay, because I'd like to put that on our agenda the next time you come before us for a vote, and then we'll have that issue behind us. So that work has been done. The other item I'd like to ask you to consider is we will need to do an ad hoc technical review committee meeting to sit down with a DPW director, the building official, the zoning official, certainly the fire marshal, hopefully North Tiverton Fire District. You are, I believe, in North Tiverton Fire District, not Stonebridge. And any other appropriate people. So think about when you would like to do that. You know, most of these technical issues will be dealt with at preliminary plan stage, not at master plan stage. But you know, you should give us some clue as to when you'd like that to be done. And so that we can start planning for that. I'd just like to say that I'm impressed by your presentation. I especially like the Overlook Park. I like the architectural design. I like the emphasis on low-impact development and minimizing the earth moving. I do have a quick comment on parking. I don't see it as a benefit to have more parking than we really need. I'd like to see as little parking as possible, as little asphalt as possible. So even, but obviously you need to have enough parking to meet your commercial needs. Obviously the restaurant needs parking. Any of the commercial, any of the office spaces and so on. That's an economic issue, and we're very sensitive to that, and we'd be very responsive to that. But I'd urge you to keep the parking at a minimum, and even think about maybe doing some pervious parking rather than impervious parking, and I think that might help you get a RIPDIS permit and solve some of your stormwater runoff issues if we can do that. I'm just throwing that out as a general suggestion. I don't know how my colleagues are going to come down on that particular issue, but and I've also been, and to wrap it up, I've also been asked to inquire about access to the private family cemetery. It's the Hambley Family Cemetery that is right in the northeast corner of your property. I believe it is on your property. Yeah.
Is that this
No,
right?
it is not. It is actually owned, I guess, by the Hambley family. But I was asked about access because the access from this area, from Souza Road, is much, much easier than access from Main Road. And would it be possible to do maybe an access right-of-way or something like that? So because the Historic Cemeteries Commission does maintain that cemetery, and it is, and they do it very nicely. It's a very attractive. They cleaned it up some years ago, and they've maintained it since then, and they'd like to have access to it, so that's just an issue. That's not a problem. I'm sure we can deal with that, but I just wanted to call it to your attention. So having said that, I'm happy to open it up to my colleagues on the planning board, and then we can go to people in the audience if they would have any questions or comments. So do I have Chris?
So, yeah, so the commercial district that, or the commercial pieces that are in there, so that's going to be open to the general public throughout town, what have you, right?
Yes.
So, and these commercial units that are going to be put in, are they just going to be shells that people can develop into whatever they want them? Are there any restrictions, or?
No, just the restrictions in the zoning ordinance. Yep.
And then the restaurant, is that a specific restaurant? Is there a name going in there? Is that a partnership? Or are you just putting a blank slate there that any restaurant owner can come in? And
Yeah, there's no, the developers won't be running a restaurant. It's identified to attract a suitable tenant. We don't know who that will be. The architectural concept is for it to not look like a national chain, but I can't guarantee that. I'm not sure what is going to happen there. For a very long time, this property was marketed for commercial, straight commercial, with zero results. Years, marketed by very good firms. There wasn't a lot of interest in any commercial at that spot by itself. But now with the synergies that have been created, the preserve, the residential units, a little more creative buzz around here instead of a standalone restaurant. There's a lot else going on here, and we think that it'll become a very attractive place for somebody, but we're not at the marketing stage now and probably wouldn't be until at least after this master plan stage, when we have something to show people that they can reasonably rely on in terms of size, access, parking, and so forth.
Seats, parking, and stuff
Exactly.
like that, back and forth.
Yep.
And what about business growth? So what if some of these businesses start to take off and they're doing well? Will there be a way that they could continue to expand their business in here? Or would they maybe have to take their businesses and go elsewhere to grow?
Well, we haven't really thought about that. The way that the commercial units on the west side are situated, it might not be that easy for them to grow. The commercial unit out front and the restaurant, this is going to be set up as a condominium. It's all going to stay one lot, and we could reserve some development rights to expand the commercial units into the spaces that they could potentially expand in and exercise those rights down the road if there becomes a need for it.
I mean, conceptually, it sounds like an awesome plan.
Yeah.
You know, you just want to keep building it,
Sure.
where people can continue to grow, and maybe the neighbors get involved and start
Yeah.
building their own little businesses as
No
well.
question. Now that, obviously, we don't own the area around the corner, and there are some really tough grades there that caused us to have two entrances this way, and for the development not to be completely connected. So there's some natural limitations to too much horizontal expansion. We're at the 35 feet for the multifamily buildings, right, Jeremy? And I'm not, there may be some, we're not there with all of the commercial buildings.
You might be able to lease more land within the existing, more square footage within the existing footprint, but it's unlikely that the footprints, as designed now, would change.
That's a good point, because there could be 4 businesses or 1 business.
Yeah, and it's just a future growth ideas of what
Correct.
to look forward to. Before they start investing, they're going to want to know what their futures are going to be, so.
So, yes, Adam?
Is there any way you guys can bring up what looks like the fire department's vehicle access?
There's a truck turning plan on the disc.
Yeah.
It's on the disc.
Okay, I mean, that's close enough, I guess.
Truck turning plan?
Yeah.
So I know you guys have a letter from Lieutenant Murphy.
Yes.
His approval for access and their capabilities to respond in there, but I think that one entrance is going to be, has the potential to be a choke point in any larger scale emergency event there with all the commercial buildings. How wide is that right there, that first turn? Right where it kind of breaks through into the development.
Right here?
Yeah, right
It's
at the top of that 90. No, I'm sorry, so the entrance, right?
Yeah. Okay, down.
So you got that 90-degree turn.
So sort of like the radius
Yeah,
is,
yeah, what is that
drives
right there?
20 feet wide, 25-foot
So,
radius inside.
I know the lieutenant, kind of signed off on it, but I don't really feel comfortable with that personally. I think there should be a one in and one out.
That
Parking area.
could be widened, but from a grade access point of view, having only 2% rising in that area, having the
After
truck
it seems
turning.
safer the way it was drawn before, when it was just a straight shot in. But I think if there was any type of evacuation that was needed and larger pieces of equipment, that could potentially be something where somebody could break down and really have issues accessing that.
The straight,
The accident in an evacuation, right there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm just thinking out loud.
Sure. The straight shot in was definitely evaluated in working with data engineering. That created a greater sight distance problem from the hill of Souza Road looking east. So moving it towards that most southwest corner, approach the hill closer so you could, the turning movements into the site were optimized by that one location. So it's only 100 feet, that length from the curb line of Souza Road onto where it opens up into the plat. So it's very short. There's not a lot of queuing that would occur in that area. There's no curb cuts within that area, so it's free moving. So it is something that we work closely with Herman on.
And I know we approved it, but it's just, that's a concern I have.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Just on that point, the draft here is 3/4/22, and the correspondence with the fire department was in April, and it sounded like there was a little back and forth, and they updated the measurements of the ladder truck.
Yes.
Could we get that updated version?
Yes, I believe this is it, but there was concern about which ladder truck to utilize for the modeling, and he had given us this, but I'll provide you with the latest plan.
Yes,
I can give you all the correspondence, but that was back and forth, was which truck, where'd you get this model?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I think we've got Rosemary and then Peter.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam, for bringing up that point. That was one of my things, too. I'm not in favor of just one entrance. I like to have an exit. I mean, perhaps because of the topography, you have constraints, but, I mean, we've had other developments where we had an emergency exit, if it's possible. Made them put something in because of that fact of evacuations. The other thing, Mr. Landry, we had some discussion. I remember Stonebridge water being, if you can clear that up. And
Yeah, I think the letter was from a Carol Destrim at Stonebridge Fire District, but it was just for water. There was a letter from Lieutenant Murphy on the fire service, so I'm confused myself. I'm certain I read that, but I'll
I
double check.
think you're right, because as the districts combined, we've had other developments along that area. The other thing was, Mr. Duhamel, you mentioned, and a very concerning with me, is the soil. And there, we had a report, I think it was 2015, from Sage. Do you plan on putting any more test holes in there? I remember when the oil tanks were there and the spillages and remediation, so it's a big concern with me as far as that goes.
Yes, it's an old tank farm that was closed. The aerial photographs within that Phase 1 show 2003, 2004, when it's completely removed. And the one before that was 1985, where the tanks still existed. So it wasn't clear to me exactly when they were removed, but DEM was overseeing that, and that's how they had given this letter, that there's unrestricted residential use on the property, but it means you have to go through the DEM with a solid waste group and provide for additional test holes and additional remediation if required. But right now, that all has to be worked out.
It's a big concern of mine.
Yes.
Having dealt with that type of okay. Peter?
Come back to you for a minute.
Adam,
All right, so, would it be possible for you guys to put your heads together and come up with some type of back door to that area? That Souza Road area, I think, fixed up. Yeah, in there somewhere.
Could it be a slide?
Yeah.
The challenge is the existing grading, and we're not trying to be difficult. There's literally 15 feet of grade change in 50 feet.
I understand.
So it's very steep. That's why even I had originally put it here, there were concerns, which is why it kind of shifted over to here. So I think we can try to look at what potential there might be, but I think the challenge would be if you add a second one, it's just going to be right next to the one that you're worried about in any case, so I'm not sure.
Would that grade be easier to contend with if you came in, on a bias off of Souza Road, from further west and wound up in that general area? Cut up across that grade at an angle rather than trying to go straight across it?
Do you want us to point?
Yeah, kind of where that little hand is. Like, go west.
Yeah, so
kind of go like that. Yeah.
I think to achieve a real dual entrance might be to provide a boulevard within this area. The grades work,
Okay.
as demonstrated within the plan set, the grades work very well here, so
They do.
if we can have two separate lanes that are wider, as Jeremy said, we looked at this initially, we looked at this, and then working with Beta, they felt there was a traffic hazard, with this movement. So that's why we moved it as far over as we did, and having one access in.
Can I address the location of that access? So the reason why we had suggested to Christopher Hamill and Dupree to move that access as far east as possible to the property line, because there is a minor vertical curve about the east where that entrance is. So in order to provide the required stopping sight distance based on the speed along Souza Road, that driveway had to be as far to the east as possible.
And I don't have a problem with that one location, that one entrance. It's just the fact that there's only one.
Right, but having a second access further west, that defeats the purpose of, trying to meet that stopping sight distances.
But an emergency access, nothing
Right.
for.
Yep, emergency access, yes.
If it's like a
Yep.
grass creek.
Right.
Right. That's what I said. If you could just cut a gravel path, like you said, we kind of
Right.
follow that bias, or, whatever,
Right.
Your engineer comes up with. But just a rough backdoor entry.
Understood.
We understand the concern, and I think we need to work harder on it. Right now, I've got a 5-foot wall that's proposed along that parking area, but we can demonstrate other means to get off the site.
Safety is critical.
And that's what we're concerned with.
We, in the past, have made other developers put in.
I've worked with you for 30 years, Rosemary. I know the past.
I know you do.
Peter?
Hey, thanks. Just a couple of clarifying questions first. Jeremy, your plan sets, those were not in our original. Have we received them since your renderings?
I'm not sure. I mean, these date back to last year, so we haven't changed our package since last year. If you don't have it, we
Just in the
can.
drive, I don't think we ever got those, and that would be really helpful to have, because understanding actually the green space becomes a little more visible with your plans than just the engineering docs.
Yeah.
So that would be helpful if you could forward that. And I just wanted to go back and clarify some of what the points Chris was making, but these commercial spaces are not intended to be or designed as retail spaces. Is that correct? Or are they potentially? Or is it more home office, studio?
So it's to be determined, and the way the parking works, it's 4 per 1,000 for commercial. That's a catch-all for everything, I think, except like a restaurant.
Okay.
The restaurant we calculated very differently, so
Yeah.
correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but I think the idea was that it's flexible. It could be office, it could be commercial. My expectation, especially on the really small spaces, they wouldn't really support retail. It would more likely be sort of an office use. But I think particularly these guys in here, I think, are the ones that I'm not exactly sure. We want to make it available to the widest range of potential users as possible. But these are certainly a different use probably than these. This we know is a restaurant. This, we're not sure which way that'll go, but that's really more purely commercial. I think I could see a number of tenants that would be interested in that one, but.
Right. And the average square feet planned for the commercials?
So each of these this is a 2,000 square foot that could be subdivided.
Could be just subdivided.
So it could be smaller. The
So
small ones
400 or
were.
500 square foot or some other.
Exactly. Yeah, we tried to, if you remember in the elevation, we included like 3, almost thinking of it as sort of, it could be 3 separate storefronts that could be a variety of sizes, or it could just be the same one tenant that just has the whole
And
space.
again, those would either be then tenant dependent in terms of if somebody wanted a whole boat or to subdivide a portion of.
Exactly. So even structurally, we would try to make that as flexible as possible. So whether you're putting up partition walls or.
So part of your
open.
parking, which getting back to that, is right now because you're trying to accommodate as much on the commercial side.
Yeah, I would say the additional parking that Chris referenced could be beneficial in terms of providing some flexibility of what
Yeah.
those tenants ultimately become.
Well, my overall feeling about this is, it's a really great plan, and I do see how it fits with the comprehensive plan in terms of what we have. I have, my two greatest disappointments is one, that you don't have control of that corner lot. Can't do anything about that at the moment. But my other is on the main road side. You have a real opportunity, given the quality of what this team can do and is starting to show us, to do a much better demonstration model. I really don't like seeing parking on our main street. Have you thought about a liner building, a commercial liner building, and maybe taking some of the commercial thoughts that are meant to be more internal, which I don't really see as being a retail opportunity. It is more an architect, a painter, people who want that live-work kind of experience, and I think there's a market for that. But to put a liner building adjacent to where you've got parking fronting that space and rejig the parking, so that we really have on our main street a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly, commercial main street with whatever those storefronts could then be. Similarly, could be subdivided into smaller retail outlets or something that is going to provide street life, be really a dynamic part of what we're envisioning for our pedestrian-friendly district. We have a real opportunity here, and it just seems that this is not showing me that to the fullest extent to be realized. So that's my biggest concern about this.
Yeah, and I'd certainly be happy to revisit it and try to see what else we can do with it. It is tough because it really is a very narrow bar. So if you're trying to consider a building that has parking behind it, there really isn't much of it behind it, or the building has to be right up on the street and very shallow, which is very inefficient, and is also, in some ways, what we were trying to do is balance the village character of sort of not having things like right up on the road. And I'm happy to take another cut and see if we can come up with an alternative. But I know our default is always parking in the back, but it's always a challenge when you have a site like this to try to solve for that. And this is a condition I would say is not uncommon in a village type setting. But some of it might also be how we work at screening the parking that's there.
With the size or configuration of the existing building that you show there, if there were a liner building, maybe that gives you the opportunity to move parking to the rear. But I just love to see that be treated a little differently, and thinking of that zone a little bit more, if that's possible.
Yeah, we'll take a look.
And then, I know it's a little early on yet, but in terms of materials and fenestration for those buildings that are facing Main Road, do you have a sense for that at this point?
I think we haven't necessarily talked about it. I imagine materials would be comparable to what we'd be using for the residential, mix of shingles, siding, board and batten, those sorts of things. The fenestration is an interesting question. I think with all of these, you can see sometimes we were wrestling between storefront versus sort of a more punched opening, village sort of character. A lot of that is going to be a little bit tenant dependent too, so not knowing what's going into that space makes it a little bit hard to make sort of an ultimate decision on that. But I think for me, the goal would be probably to have something that is fairly open, especially at the corner and facing where the folks would potentially be coming from, but still having some windows and openings out towards Main Road. That doesn't want to be a blank wall, for sure.
Yeah, there are one or two other sort of solo, isolated commercial spaces that have, over the years, that something is opened and it's closed, and it's open and it's closed. So there's an opportunity to create a little synergy and energy and that fenestration to the street, helping those other spaces along, and that goes to the economic development argument in terms of really a zone that's building a quality destination that then people can walk up and down the street, which also brings me then to sidewalks on Main Road, and wanting to see that really treated. I know the internal looks great, but pedestrian amenities and the sidewalks on Main Road to Souza, ideally, and I know we've got that other parcel there, but part of being able to start to realize this district is seeing it start, at least in places, and I'd love to see some movement in that direction.
So the pedestrian-friendly district is all about pedestrians and encouraging pedestrians, encouraging street life, people visiting the shops. And so we will probably be asking you to build a sidewalk to nowhere. But in time, it will fill out.
It's stitched together.
So, because you don't,
And I was just going to mention at the moment, I'm sorry to switch gears on you, I want to go to the civil plan and prove that it was...
You go back.
We've included a sidewalk along our frontage on Main Road. So we knew that for sure was going to be expected.
Exactly. And then whoever fills in on either side will also be required to put a sidewalk in. At least that's my vision. That's my hope.
Two other quick things, just other modes of transportation, so bicycles, accommodations for biking, and both internally and, on the main road frontage. I'm sure we'll be thinking more about that. And the walkability, as Stu was saying. And then the other thing is, and I don't know how this works, and we don't really have authority over this, but I want to say it anyway, is that how you attract the appropriate tenants for the commercial spaces, especially the restaurant, would go greatly to the quality and also the kinds of traffic and things of that nature. So, a non-national vendor, a Newport restaurant group, for example, they've got Boathouse down the way. I'm just thinking about the way that, and whatever the commercial other spaces. And so from the developer's point of view, they have a commercial leasing agent who works with them, but just that I think the types of uses and the quality of those uses, especially the commercial ones, again, we have an opportunity to really have a demonstration project for something that's significant and appropriate. And so I'm just saying that so that it's said.
So I just have a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So obviously the environmental impact of clearing all the land, where's all the wildlife going to go? I had a young girl come into my store not too long ago, and she said, she lived up in New Hampshire, and she says, I'm kind of scared. I said, why are you scared? And she says, because they're removing all the trees. I said, yeah, okay. She says, I'm scared I'm not going to be able to breathe. Okay? That scared me when I really thought about it. And I don't think we're thinking about the bigger picture here in the long run. And it's really starting to, add up with all these different buildings and things that are coming up. I think we really need to be looking at the environmental impact that we're leaving, not for us, but our children. For a child to say that to me was very disturbing. For two, as far as, you're doing office space, I know that's kind of starting to phase out, especially after COVID. Things have changed a lot. Restaurants aren't booming like the way they used to be. I know a lot of people in the restaurant industries, and they're still trying to recover. Office spaces, I see all the time, Fall River, even in Tiverton, office spaces for lease. I mean, constantly. Are we going to end up with buildings, empty buildings? People are working from remote. People are ordering from Amazon, Chewy, all these different retail outlets, Walmart.com. No one's going to stores anymore. These younger people, they're not going there. They don't want to go. No one hangs out at the mall anymore. We don't do our shopping there. Everything's online. Quick, easy, fast, done. So I'm very concerned with what this is going to do environmentally to our town. And I'm concerned we're going to have a bunch of buildings that are going to be empty forever. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yes, Tricia.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I, having recently joined the planning board, was not here for the informal concept presentation, so if I'm asking something that's been answered, I apologize. But I do have a number of rather random questions. To the point on the commercial spaces, this parcel is bisected in part by the pedestrian-friendly district, but also the general commercial district. So do you envision the use table that manages those commercial spaces being the general commercial use table, or some other set of guidelines that the property management determines? I mean, I ask that because some of the uses in the general commercial district might be a little bit louder or have more odor than you might want to have inside a residential building. So do you see, have you thought about the use table at all?
Well, we don't want to make it too narrow. You know, the town's drawn it up as general commercial. I guess we'll look at that more clearly. If there's some kind of offensive use in the general commercial, like, I don't know, a blacksmith or something that's making a lot of noise, we may consider internal controls. So I have to tell you, we haven't considered that to that detail, thinking that would be something we might be interested in, but you're just as interested as we are in knowing what maybe won't be allowed to go there with the residences. So we'll look at that and address it specifically.
And a little bit to Peter's point, and I realize there's a fairly steep grade there, but is there any consideration of a connection from the sidewalk or the commercial building on Main Road up to the higher place? I say that because depending on what kind of businesses and services end up there, you know, you've got neighborhoods across the street, you've got the villages at Mount Hope Bay, and it would be, although there may be some steps involved, it would be a shorter traverse, you know, to be able to come up from Main Road than it would be to, you know, kind of walk the long way all the way down Souza Road. And it may present more opportunity for people outside of the community to access the business, you know, locations within the facility. I know it's steep, but...
Yeah, I think...
And the overlook there too, because it's actually a lovely green space that if you could access, as Trish is saying, from Main Road, that's another part of the health of a community, you know, walking and those kind of amenities.
Yeah.
I think we have like 3 or 4 places that you can walk in Tiverton.
The grades are the challenge. I think we could take a look at it, but it is 30 feet. It's a 3-story building's worth of difference there, so it would definitely be stairs. I don't know how many stairs. I don't know if it would zigzag back and forth.
Across to Fort Barton, that
is true, and most of us could use a little more exercise, so it might actually be a
longer walk. It might
actually be popular.
Yeah. I'd just like to say that I don't know if anybody's ever been to Greenville, South Carolina, which is held out to be sort of a showcase of smart growth. What they've done with an old textile community and turned it into, you know, a place for arts and crafts and all kinds of interesting businesses. But it's a very, very steep terrain. My cousin lives there. And it has stairs going up all over the place. But when you get to the top of the staircase, you're in a beautiful overlooked park. And it kind of reminded me of what Tricia was saying of what we might be able to do here that has already been done very successfully in Greenville, South Carolina. But, I mean, just something to think about. And I know it's an economic issue, so, but...
On the topography, do you know yet how much, if any, ledge is there, and will it require significant blasting?
We haven't encountered any ledge in any of the test pits that were completed, so I don't anticipate any, but we'll be doing more testing.
And my last question, for me, is the most important one. Your plan notes that this is a phased development. Have you laid out yet the particular phases? And if so, can you share them with us?
I'm not aware of phases as of yet, Bill? Chris?
It was meant to be a village that would be created in phases, not just all at once, so if we could be more specific on which residences are built first.
Just from my own perspective, for me, that would be important to know. I'm sure that you have every intention of building all of this and that it will be as lovely as it's presented. But Tiverton has a history with several large projects that included not just residential but commercial development as well, that were to be built in phases. And while the residential development was completed, the commercial components didn't happen. So I think that it would be of great interest to me to understand your phasing, because we'd like, if in fact the planning board gives its approval, we'd like to be assured that all of the components will be constructed and know when they would expect to be constructed.
Certainly.
Yes, Janice.
Just a question on the housing. Are they going to be rental units, purchased units?
Well, I'll tell you what I saw in the package there. The pro forma currently focuses on for sale units as all of the revenue. The letter from the monitoring agency that's agreed to handle the affordable houses mentions a focus on rentals. I think the ownership group would like to have the potential for some of these units to be rented, even if they're owned. You know, the owner could be the landlord of, whoever occupies it. So I think we're going to have to look a little more closely on whether that's something we really want, whether it's something you really want, and address it more specifically. That's the best I can do right now. I think it's one of those things that we might want to consider retail, but somehow some of our consultants got different messages as to whether there was going to be a rental component or not. So we've got to do a better job of making that a little clearer. Obviously, if it is rentals, the rentals will only be at 80% of area median income. I don't think anything greater than 80% of area median income is considered by Rhode Island Housing for the rental units. That's just the for sale units, so that could affect the overall mix. But I'm going to look back at the owners there and see if there's any real aversion to rental, or if that's an issue we just need to discuss.
A lot of it's going to be market driven, Bill. You can't say, well, it's going to all be rental or it's all going to be condos. It could be a combination of both. As the economy starts to get a little more difficult here and the interest rates jack up, that tends to lead more towards rental. Things come back down again, it could go the other way. But regardless, it's probably going to be a combination.
Does that answer your question, Janice? Okay. Well, I'd like to open it up to the general public to see if anybody in the audience has any questions or comments that they'd like to make. I see Sue Anderson. So Sue, give your name slowly and your address.
Susan Anderson, Main Road. I am with the Historic Cemeteries Commission, and I thank you for getting that access, because we were, in our meeting last night, we were just saying, oh, we've got to do Hambly again, cutting it down, this time of year. But going up from Main Road, we park at Little Bear, and then we walk up with all of our tools and everything, and it's a pain in the neck to walk up that hill on Main Road. So if it's possible, there's 2 entrances actually to the cemetery itself. There is one on the south side. Yeah, on the south side, right there. Yep, there's a small entrance there, and then there's another bigger entrance on the other side going down to Main. But the access on this side, like I said, would be a heck of a lot easier for us to get our equipment up. And if it's possible that we can, I don't know if we can park, if we can do vehicles, to park our vehicles like in the back there, and then walk up to the cemetery, that would be a heck of a lot shorter for us to maintain that, rather than walking all the way from Main Road up. It's horrible. It is a horrible hike with tools and whatnot. So that's one thing I want to ask, and if we can have access, parking there, and then just walking to clear the cemetery. The other thing that I was going to mention, which Tricia brought up, was having some kind of a walking trail or something from the commercial building on Main Road up to the overlook. I don't know how you can do that, but because it would be a lot easier, a lot nicer, and quicker to go from Main Road up, because you already have sidewalks on Main Road. So you just cross the street and then go up to the park. I mean, that would be a nice, lunch spot or just an overlook or whatever. So if you have a walking trail or something. I also agree that I do not want to see any national or regional chains in the commercial areas. I'd also like to see, I know you have these bird's eye views of the 3-dimensional buildings and what they look like, but being in the neighborhood and seeing this from my house, I would really like to see what these buildings look like with the high 35-foot buildings on top of this grade from the street view. So I'd like to see a 3D CAD model perspective type of thing from the street view, like what we would see. That's because I want to know what it's going to look like from my house. And I just have another question. I know you don't have anything to do it, but we've kind of hinted around here. I know Peter said that. If the corner was resold, what might you put there? Just a thought. If you were able to buy that corner back, what might you put there?
This is total speculation.
I know it is.
I have a problem with that.
I know it is, but I'm bringing it up.
I almost think it should be struck from the record. Well, I don't see anybody else. I'd like to...
I just want to say something to Sue, because I met her last year and on the same subject on the access to the cemetery. And I assured her that you will have your access to the cemetery. We talked about that. I know, and I probably don't remember, but you will provide that access, and I know exactly.
Yes, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we've been clearing, it hadn't been cleared in ages, and we had dryers and everything, and now we've cleared it. So now it's just this time of year we're going back and, cutting the dryers down again, but that hill.
Sir, while you're standing up, could you come up to the mic and introduce yourself so that we can get you into the minutes?
Okay, my name's Don Huggins, and I'm with Oxford Development Company, And I want to put on the record that Sue and I...
You were with us a year ago, I believe. Yeah.
I've been with you for 40 years, but that's beside Yes, I'm glad you remember. But yes.
I just did that for the purposes of minutes. Thank you very much. I think this has been a very good, a very productive session. I'm encouraged. I'm actually kind of enthusiastic about this project, and I'd like to see it move forward. And I think the issues that have been raised tonight are issues that we can work out as we go forward. So thank you so much for coming. If you have any, yes, we have one, and I believe. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
My name is Suzanne Del Deo, and I live on Roseland Terrace in town. I was wondering if you would have a planning for the sewer and the water runoff on paper, the planning of that.
Chris Duhamel, we do have a concept plan within the master plan set that shows connection to the water off of Main Road and sewer off the easement that exists on Souza Road.
Okay, well, I thought maybe I could see the plan if you had a copy of it.
It's available in the planning office.
Okay, then I'll get one. And also, I find this high number project of houses, homes, this is my first meeting, about this project. I find it a bit overwhelming for our town because, we have that comprehensive plan that was written up to preserve the rural character of our town. This would have a big impact on traffic issues, possible crime in our rural town, and therefore we may have to hire more policemen. We're defunding the police as it is. I'm just not in favor of it. And then the project doesn't care about wildlife. Being on top of a hill and a project of this size, what prevents sewage and the way water tends to flow from getting in the groundwater and of the homes or condos below and decontaminating the water and the Mount Hope River as well? It seems awfully big to handle, the water issues that could definitely be a catastrophe for our beautiful town and, the residents that live here. And, instead of keeping Tiverton rural, we're looking at a more urban environment by what's being talked about this evening. My opinion is 8 acres of land could very well be more suitable for nicely built homes that would fall into the Tiverton Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So we'll be taking up some of the issues that you mentioned, particularly at the preliminary plan stage.
If I could just say one quick thing.
Yes.
Is, I think a lot of people say, I don't know how we can get the community more involved in stuff like this, because I hear stuff like she just said every single day in passing bys, in local restaurants, and in, so on and so forth. And they all say the same thing. I've lived here for over 20 years, and recently now it's just becoming more of a bigger development. Everyone seems to want to develop something here. And I don't know if it's because the train's coming closer, if that's why. It's cheaper to live down here than it is. I'm just so confused, and I really, really wish our younger community would come out and sit in these meetings and really have a voice, because we're not thinking about the environmental impact or the rural foundation that we've had in Tiverton. I just can't stress that enough, and it's just really bothering me. And I just had to say it. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to dampen anyone's parade, but these are things that I'm constantly hearing, and it's just so concerning. And I just don't know how. I don't know how to help anymore. It's a shame. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to put that out there. I know it has nothing, with the personal or anything, but I just hear this so much in the town. Like, I just don't know how else I can help get the community to come down to these meetings and just be a part and voice their opinions out loud here in the public than at a coffee shop.
Thank you, Amanda. So I think that we are ready to conclude this agenda item tonight. And do we have any idea when we can bring Souza Road condominiums back?
I wanted to do the TRC.
Well, I'm not pushing the TRC. I'm just saying that we should do the TRC when it's appropriate to do the TRC. I've seen TRCs done too early in the process, long before people are really focused on, have the background to be really productive on the technical issues. But, that's something that you should think about and talk to us about when you'd like to do that. So, and we could put that, we have to appoint, so that's something that we have to vote on. The planning board has to vote to appoint an ad hoc technical review committee. So we could do that perhaps at the next time you come back. I'm not ready to do it tonight.
It's not on the agenda tonight anyways,
Yeah.
to appoint the TRC.
Yeah, right.
But if you want one, we can put it on the December 6th agenda to vote for one, if you want one, to keep the project moving along.
That's entirely up to the applicant. If you would like us to do that on December 6th, it only takes a few minutes.
Yeah, I think we would, because if there's something we've missed that could be, change the concept of the whole design, there are a lot of suggestions made about footpaths and ways to cross the topography there, and it might be a good time to have the building official there and the fire, and it's hard to get all these people together too, and the holidays are coming up, so
Yes.
it might be good to get that process started sooner rather than later.
Okay.
If I recall, those are usually done like in the morning, right?
Yes, we tend to do it 10, 11 o'clock in the morning because that's when the municipal officials are available. So we'll...
There have been some changes in personnel too, and I listened last night to, we have a new fire chief. He may have some good input. I think, I think it's
So theoretically, if you do the TRC in December, theoretically, we have a February 18 time clock on this matter. Do you want them to come back for the January meeting? Or even the February meeting, you'd still be within the time clock?
Yeah. Yes. Well, let's defer that, and maybe the TRC would be the next step. And then, but we also have to see what's on our agenda and what we absolutely have to get done because of the time clocks. So we can't make a decision about that tonight.
Well, we still need to give them a definite date for continuance, whether it's January or February. We have to do that tonight.
So do you have a preference there, Bill?
I think the 6th would be good to come back, if anything, just to appoint the TRC, if that's, or we can respond to some of the things that have been raised tonight.
I think Mr. Hardy's point was to appoint the TRC on December 6th. You can be present if you want to or not.
Our agenda is pretty full for December 6th already, so...
Well, we can at least get the TRC process.
But we can certainly appoint a TRC on December 6th, but then after that, would you like us to continue this this hearing on master plan to our January meeting or to our February meeting?
I would say the January meeting.
Okay, we'll try to do that.
Yeah,
we'll do that. And if we get into trouble,
bless you.
We'll talk to you about it if we get into trouble in terms of a timetable where we just don't have any choice. But we'll certainly try to accommodate you in January.
Thank you.
If that's solid, I'll make a motion to continue this public hearing to the January 10th meeting.
Right, we haven't even approved our calendar for next year, but we're going to do it anyhow. So I will second that motion to continue this to January 10, 2023.
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
All of those in, hearing no discussion? Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion? All of those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Okay, unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice Thanksgiving.
Again, Bill, if you want to come on the 6th, the appointment of the TRC is totally your choice.
Thank you.
So our next agenda item is Deduca Real Estate LLC, and this is a project at 50 Stafford Road. On the east side of Stafford Road, up by the Fall River border, just north of the new traffic circle that was put in for the casino. And you may remember that there's a motor scooter business there now. I believe it's about 1.3 acre lot fronting on Stafford Road. It's plat 203, lot 135. And I believe there are two buildings, the scooter building, and then behind that, there's like a little house, little cottage.
Yeah, it's a container that was turned into an office for the previous owner.
Okay, and then I think there's a third outbuilding, isn't there, on the property?
There used to be at one point, but that's...
Okay, so there are basically only two buildings. So
It's a maternity yard and their office is there, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you back up on the, you back up onto Hurst Lane, so you may have frontage on Hurst Lane. Maybe no, you don't. You don't. But you're close. So now I'd like Michael Monte, I know, is your legal counsel, but could we have your name, sir?
My name is Philip Deduca.
Thank you.
And I'm the owner of the property.
And you're the owner. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone, members of the board. Michael Monte of Sareen and Thayer on behalf of Mr. Deduca. Before we begin, I'd like to pass out a printout of the site. This is taken from Google Earth, and I think it'll be useful for everyone to have as we're discussing this project. I think there should be enough for everyone.
Much easier to see than a little square.
So I'll just wait for that to make its way around. As the chairman said, this site is at 50 Stafford Road. We're here this evening for concept plan review. So the stage before the presentation that was just before you. So I'll be providing a brief overview of the project. Mr. Deduca is here this evening, and Joshua Morrow of Principe Engineering is also here to answer any questions you may have. As you're aware, 50 Stafford Road is located at the very north of Tiverton. As you're coming down from Fall River, it's very near to the Rotary. As the chairman made you aware, this is the site of the Scooter Palace, and there are two existing structures on the site. If you're looking at the printout I just gave you, the site forms almost a big L. So on the far right here, the structure you're looking at is the dialysis center. And then Mr. Deduca's land is that space behind the dialysis center. The space beneath it all the way up to where the red point is that's marked 50 Stafford Road, and that is the scooter shop. And as the chairman also made you aware, two structures on the site. One is a storage container office, almost a semi-permanent structure. That's right behind the red dot marking 50 Stafford Road. It's the long structure. It's got a taller in the middle. The back of the site is totally undeveloped. I believe there's a concrete pad over some of it. And then on the southern portion of the lot is really just a blacktop concrete sea that's used for storage containers and parking at this time. So Mr. DeDuca purchased the land last year. He's been operating the scooter shop for the past 7 years and is the owner of that business. The plan we have this evening for concept plan review is to keep the structure that is the scooter shop. In the back of the lot that's undeveloped would be a 2,400 square foot building, approximately. We're still in the concept stage, that we anticipate being a contractor's bay. And then sort of at the bottom of the lot here towards the south, in the front of the lot that fronts Stafford and adjacent to the scooter shop would be a 3,600 square foot combined retail office space that's yet to be determined and obviously would be tenant dependent. Currently on site, all of the runoff in the front just goes across the street down into the municipality's drainage basins that you can see on the printout. There's no treatment or drainage on site. So this plan will, as all redevelopment projects require, see a net reduction in runoff. We anticipate putting drainage on the rear of the lot, sort of behind the dialysis center. And, you know, we recognize that the board is likely to have a lot of questions in terms of landscaping and elevations, renderings. I don't have that here tonight at the concept stage, but we very much look forward to coming back at master plan once we've heard from the board, thoughts, comments. Mr. DeDuca is very much looking forward to receiving that feedback. And at this time, unless there are any particular questions for me, I would also welcome the board to ask any questions they have of Mr. DeDuca or Mr. Mora with respect to the engineering plans, while recognizing that we are at a concept level stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I did visit the site. And I think anything you do there will be an improvement over what we have now. So I'm positive at this point. I did notice, though, that as you leave the site at the curb cut and try to turn south, you have to go across a solid line. And that might pose a little bit of a problem, because I'm not sure the state will allow that solid line to be broken up because of the traffic circle and the amount of traffic that goes in and out. So that could be a little bit of a problem.
I have an answer. When the state put the rotary in, they had first proposed a solid, like on the other end of it, where that curbing goes all the way down. But this property's always had an opening there because of the way the road was designed before. And so the previous owner addressed the state, they got everybody down there, and they moved the curbing back. They put, if you notice, there's cross sections in that double lane.
Yes.
To allow for vehicles to come in and out of there, because it would hamper the business. You
Okay.
wouldn't have been able to get in and out of there.
Okay, I thought it was, I actually crossed that line, and I thought it was doing something illegal, but you're telling me that it's...
Yeah, so they did what they had to do to make it so it could still be accessible from either way. And there's really not, well, I think they need to address the traffic issues down at the other end when you're coming up from the gas station. But, so that addresses that, and there's 2 openings to the property, and a little background on myself. I've lived in Tiverton over 20 years. I had a restaurant here in Tiverton, the Italian restaurant Nonni's.
That was very good.
Yeah. So,
A little disappointed you closed.
Yes.
well, there could be another one coming back.
Hey!
So,
Approved. No, just kidding.
so, again, living in Tiverton, trying to make the place better. I mean, the place, it was this mulch, sand, and gravel disaster, and so now that corner has really, everybody around has upped their game, it's time for this property to come up. Or also, we've already got the kidney center, there's a dermatologist on the end, so I'm looking for the type of tenant that is gonna, enhance the area. Also, being a businessman for a long time, you have to have things that work together. So, like my business closes at 5, so a restaurant opening at 4 is a nice use of the space so that they're not fighting each other. The property in the back, it doesn't have any frontage. It's good for like a contractor, they store their stuff there, they're in and out in the morning and back in the evening and done. And again, we haven't gotten to the rendering stages of buildings, but our goal is to, just coming by the Family Dollar up on Stafford Road, it's not like the average Family Dollar. They just did a couple little things to it, and it fits the area much better. And so that's what will be proposed for the buildings. And then also, I would like to, of course, remodel the Scooter Palace to kind of, we, painted it and repaved and did a few cosmetic things, but with this project, we want to kind of bring it all in.
I have only completely agree with what you're saying. I have no issue with that, but I would like to say one thing, and this is probably directed more to Michael than to you. This application should not be, in my opinion, a major land development. It should rather be an Article 20 development plan review. It is now listed, I believe. Okay, well, I saw it here as a major land development.
That plan has been issued.
Okay, that's changed. Okay, that's fine. Article 20 Development Plan Review. And that's a 2-step process, whereas if it was a major land development, that would be a 3-step process and would probably take you longer to get through. But this is exactly, what you're doing here exactly fits the parameters of the Article 20 Development Plan Review in our zoning ordinance. So that's all I have to say. Now I'll open it up to members of my colleagues on the planning board to see if.
So this is in support of your project, which I think is an awesome plan, but will the state have amnesia to what they did for you, or was that an approved
No, that was fully approved, and because they
documented that.
Yeah, the previous owner fought with them, and he was threatening to hold the whole project up if they didn't get that, because you can not shut down somebody's business that's been there with the pre-existing curb cuts and whatnot, and so. Yeah.
And when we come back at the next
stage. It's like
stage,
even, they have that curb cut across the street there where there's people who started cutting in and out of there. I know they wanted to try to eliminate that, and they couldn't do that either, so.
But now it seems like if you put a restaurant there, when you start increasing more volume, that they get a little cold feet over, would they go
Yeah,
pay?
well,
When we come back at the next stage, I'll have the appropriate documentation, do the due diligence to determine what in fact has or has not been approved.
I just have a quick question. So, the contractor bay, is that like big construction vehicles that are gonna like?
No. The actual person that's looking at it is a heat and air conditioning gentleman. And it's just vans.
Regular trucks and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
Okay,
We're
I
talking
just
about
wasn't
4 or 5
sure.
vans and a place to keep all their stuff.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was gonna be like big trucks and then you got the restaurant and then trying to get in
No,
and.
it doesn't, there's just not that much room and it's, no.
Okay.
I have a few questions.
Yes, Rosemary?
I do have some issues with the plan and the checklist. They don't jive. And first thing is, where is the stamp, the PLS stamp and signature? There's a notation that Mr. Therian,
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, it's closer. Yes, according to the checklist, you're supposed to have a professional land surveyor's stamp and plan, stamp and signature on the plan, and there is none.
I believe there's a stamp.
It's a stamp from a professional engineer, but Mr. Therian's stamp is not on, he did the survey.
Thomas Principe or?
Mr. Principe is a professional engineer, and according to the checklist, we require site plans to have a Class 1 PLS, signature and stamp.
Yep, we will have the appropriate stamp at the next stage.
Item number 11 on the checklist. The site plan, they differ, the title blocks differ all along.
I'm gonna just pull it out so that I can make sure
Sure.
that I'm following along with you. I have it open now.
Okay. Pages 3, 4. You don't reference Stafford Commons, as you have done on page 2, all the way through. It should be consistent. You reference residences on page 4. Residences on Stafford. Don't pay the bill.
She's looking at the
I'm looking at the site plan.
the engineering site plan, and we will remedy these. And
It should coincide with the checklist, and it doesn't.
understood.
Okay? The purpose statement should be on page 2, where you have all of the zoning criteria, and give us a little more detail. You have it on the first page, kinda. To demolish existing home and site center on the property and construct new retail office space and contractor bay area with storage above it. You just discussed.
But there is no demolish.
It says it on the plan.
The one structure I think that will be
I don't think
removed.
anybody realized it's a container and it needs to get moved by the previous owner to get that.
Well, that's his
Right,
word,
but
not
yeah, I
mine.
don't think people realize that it's not
It's not.
it looks like a building, but, well, it is a building, but,
Get rid of it.
yeah, it's got wood wrapped around a metal container.
The abutters, there's an abutters list. The abutters are not on the plan. I mean, they should be on the plan like all the others.
The list of.
The abutters are supposed to be on the site plan.
Okay, we can add it to the site plan.
Mr. Principe should know.
Josh.
I mean. Okay. That's all I have for now. Anybody else?
I mean, I'm going over this now, it's just this now, too, since you brought something up.
Thank you.
The very first one, is there a general location map?
The locus,
The locus map
the
is,
locus, they used an aerial.
I don't, is it that size?
It's not clear.
Yeah, but that's not a half mile, right? Depicting the subject parcel, it's supposed to be an aerial photograph satellite.
Not to scale.
and we're
Shows
happy,
an area within a half mile radius, and that doesn't show that. It's only a couple hundred yards in either direction.
we're happy to provide whatever specifications that the planning office, if they give us that feedback, we're happy to take it and do it. And I do submit these plans to the administrative office and request feedback before making the formal submission, and I will do that again with these notes.
So just to clarify though, the planning office does not have to certify as complete concept plan review. So don't get on planning staff for that.
I'm not
There's no
getting on.
certification of completeness. Mr. Monte, I think, has heard your complaints. He's going to fix it for master plan.
In the past, they have done it. The AOs have done it along with a consulting
Well,
engineer.
It's not required. There's no
Might not be
statutory
required in your
requirement.
book, but it was in ours.
Okay.
Adam, did you have anything else?
That was it.
And Peter?
Would you just clarify, so on the existing plan, you are raising some of the structures?
No.
No.
So I think I can clarify. So if you look at the 50 Stafford Road printout, there's this small structure behind the principal structure that is rectangular.
Yep.
Way back there, yeah.
Yes, that is really made out of storage containers and
one container.
and would be removed, but I think the word demolish may not be
Okay.
it really can just be picked up and
Moved.
But
taken away. Those are actually
are tractor trailers, and it's not a storage situation or anything because you're not supposed to be storing stuff in Tiverton. It's a gentleman that I know that is just parking them there and
But that site that is where a new structure is being.
Yes, yeah, a structure would be going like right around where those
And is that a
trailers are.
single-story structure?
I think we got.
I think we have two-story at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not
Well, it says one floor.
And the back one is the two-story one,
The
right?
back one's a two-story, the
Yeah.
front one, I thought it was
The front one doesn't look like it says two-story.
Correct. Forgive me. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
And again,
Yeah, because it says one floor.
in terms of the design of the full project, we're still, in terms of what the uses will be, those determinations are still being made from a
I
concept
think
point of
at
view.
this point, one of the, and I commend you for taking this on. This is a really hard edge. And I think one thing that you might want to consider is how this new proposed structure is sited. And so rather than continuing to have a sea of asphalt and parking in the front at the corner, which is the predominant thing one would see, is to get that building as close to, and I don't know what the frontage tolerances are there, but that could be an area where you might consider a waiver and coming before zoning. But having that edge softened and having an attractive structure in a place with appropriate landscaping would do a great deal to diminish what is a really tough line of the property. And then maybe your neighbor will do something to screen their parking on that side and you would work together. But I really think that needs to be looked at in consideration. And then I'm not understanding what you're talking about because it is just one flat open space, but delineating how then cars are entering in and out, and if there's a commercial use to that two-story structure proposed to the back, being able to carefully plan how that traffic with whatever
Do you
more
have one of these?
commercial retail sort of use in the front.
Did you get
How
one
those
of
things-
these there?
Sorry?
Did you get one of these?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
So there's, like, coming You really have
I
to
see
walk
a
the property.
proposed
So
driveway,
coming,
but
a
there's-
proposed driveway running right through the center down to the back.
Yeah, what's
So-
hard though is right now is that it's not delineated.
Yeah, and
We can-
and once we come back, we'll have, I expect we'll be required to provide a traffic report and to also provide, access for emergency vehicles, and at that
Completely
point we'll have.
understand. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
no, and I
so that
appreciate it.
you're
We'll keep a
aware that
list.
It's
Thank
something
you.
we're gonna look at, and that to really delineate how those two will work together.
And I can understand exactly where everybody's coming from, because I've been on the property, I've got a kind of an idea, and then I've been back and forth with these guys a bunch of times, because they give me these drawings, and I'm like, how does that make any sense? You know, from there, and this and that. So, yeah, actually, when you get that rendering where it becomes a little more 3D-ish, yes, I
My other comment would be, if you can, between what is, and I can't tell exactly, but it does look as though there's a contiguous sidewalk that was probably
Yep,
installed as part of
that was put in by the state, we can't touch
state.
that.
No, that's great, but.
And they also, that was the other thing, that with putting that opening, allowing us to be able to come in and out on that opening, the state moved the crosswalk to there, and that's where they have the crosswalk to.
Now that I can see.
Yeah.
My point would be.
Because we do have people walk
Just
by every day.
instead of having asphalt or again an impervious material abut the sidewalk, if you can bring some more, remove that, get a little more green space, some planting, something in there to soften the edge. I think would be great to show how that is being treated. So again, it's minimizing and softening the impact, removing a lot of that impervious material.
And we'll come back with the landscape plan and see what we can do with how much parking we need and the final dimensions of the building. Appreciate it.
Mr. Monty, I forgot one. It's not Hurst Road, it's Hurst Lane on the plan.
Yeah, Hurst Lane is your.
I will.
Where the dialysis center is.
Mr. DeLuca knows that, I'm sure.
So we'll just wait, and Michael, you can talk to the planning office if you need any, if you have any questions or need any information, and we'll just await your submission of a preliminary plan, and we'll take it from there. But this is, I certainly wish you well.
I have a question though, if we're gonna move to this other process.
No, it turns out I was wrong. I was reading, it said so on this plan, major land development, but it was actually, it is actually on our agenda as a development plan review, which is a simpler, more straightforward process, I think.
It's already been established, we're trying to make it nicer.
So you may, well,
Versus cutting, opening up a whole new.
You mentioned the Dollar General store. I was on the planning board when we did approve that. We had an architect, a local architect, Melissa Hutchinson, who worked with the architect for Dollar General to make that store look a whole lot nicer than most of the Dollar General stores look. And at the end of that process, their architect admitted that it didn't cost Dollar General any more money than it would have cost them if they had given us the standard thing that they normally do. So yes, I completely agree with you. And if you can do something like that in your location, that would be a big benefit to the town of Tiverton. So good luck, and hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Look forward to seeing you come back.
Thank you, Rosemary, for helping me out.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, I just have a question. So where were you saying putting the building? Bringing it all the way to the corner? I'm sorry, bringing it all the way to the corner, the building?
As close to the edge as possible.
As like just like the Dollar General is, all the way up to the top there?
I'm not familiar with the Dollar General.
I don't know where else would be.
Trying to remove the parking from the front and moving it
To the rear?
It's a general principle of the smart growth movement, or some people call it the new urbanism movement, to recapture the old-fashioned downtown feel and look by moving the store right up to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Rather than having a sea of paved asphalt before you get to the store. And
does it work okay with it? Like, do you flip-flop the restaurant? Like, so it's flip-flopped, so the back is still the front and the front is still the back? If it's a, because like the back, I'm thinking like back of the house of a restaurant is normally like, meh. So how would you?
That's for the architects.
I guess so, huh? I'm trying to like visually understand it, like how you were kind of proposing.
Well, so the idea being that it would address the front side. The front side of the house would address the street.
Exactly. And that's what we tried to do with Dollar General, and I think we did it rather.
The Dollar General looks great.
Yes,
yeah.
Successfully. Okay, now, we are now on agenda item number 3, which is Planning Board, and the first item is ordinance rewrite, board letter to town council regarding rewriting zoning and subdivision ordinances and budgeting money for the same, discussion and possible vote. And I would, since I was the one who put this on the agenda at our last meeting, I'd like to just call your attention to a draft that I sent out about 2 weeks ago, and I think Ed sent it out. Actually, I sent it to Ed, and Ed sent it out to you. And this is my draft memo to the town council, and then as an attachment, a more detailed analysis of what needs to be done to bring zoning into compliance with our current comprehensive plan. Very little has been done in that respect, and we need to move forward. We do need some technical and professional help. We need legal help, certainly, and we need a professional planner, in my opinion, to back up legal, and that will cost a lot of money, a lot more money than we have. So I called the town council in this draft memo, which I'm going to ask you to approve or approve with amendments or reject tonight. I call their attention to the fact that there is a budget line item in the current budget. Our current fiscal year ends June 30th, 2023. And we do have a line item, and for specifically, this is not the budget for the planning board. This is a line item for specifically for legal services to support the rewriting of zoning or the updating of our zoning ordinance to bring it into compliance with the comprehensive plan, or into alignment with the comprehensive plan would probably be a better way to put it. And that particular budget item has $10,000 in it, and no monies have been spent from it, so it still has 10 grand in it. However, at the end of the fiscal year, since it is a non-restricted account, that $10,000 goes back into the general budget. And I'm hoping that over time, and this is going to take years, not months, years, to be able to build up sufficient funds that town council will think about making that particular budget item, which is account number 1040-7195, Legal Services Review, Rewrite, Zoning Code, make that line item a dedicated item that would not revert to the general fund, but would carry on into future fiscal years. And then perhaps in our next fiscal year, we can add another 10 or 15,000, and the year after that, another 10 or 15,000, and eventually we'll get to the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 level that we need to actually get this job done. So it's not going to happen anytime soon. I thought it would be good to, and we had this discussion at our last meeting, good to just call the town council's attention to the fact that this is something that we should be looking at and planning for. And it's going to be 3 or 4 years out into the future, probably anyhow, before we get enough money. In the meantime, I'm telling town council in this little memo that members of the planning board don't want to be lazy. We want to get to work on this and do what we can. And we do have a little group that is now looking at things that we can actually do without outside expertise. Fairly simple, straightforward things. So we'll be chipping away at the task while town council helps to raise the money to do the big items. So does anybody have any questions or any comments about this memo, which looks like this? It's actually a letter, not a memorandum. And I see Tricia Hilton has a question, and then Adam has a comment or a question.
So the Community Comprehensive Plan was adopted in 2018?
Correct.
And now it's 2022?
Correct.
And if we ask the council for $10,000 or $20,000 a year, by the time we have enough money to hire the kind of help that we need, both legal help as well as professional planning help, it will be time for the next Community Comprehensive Plan rewrite. So, and I don't think that the council's not aware, nor do I think that our legal support is not aware, that the zoning code is in desperate need of overhaul, that there are things in the Community Comprehensive Plan that should have been done years ago. We just never set aside enough money for it. I realize it's my first day here, but I don't think we should ask for $10,000. I think it's time to make the case to the council that this needs to be considered a capital improvement, because it is a capital improvement. Just like any other department or function within the town sometimes comes forward and says it's time to spend some money. Even if we do that, by the time it gets allocated in the budget now we're talking about next year, right? By the time it gets allocated in the budget, and then we go out to bid, right? And then eventually, hopefully we hire somebody, and it's going to take them some period of time to get up to speed, to be able to come in and work through this stuff. We're still talking about a long time frame. So my recommendation is that we make the case to the council. It is time, finally, to put a stake in the ground and spend the money to get the zoning code updated and to allow the important things in the Community Comprehensive Plan to be implemented. Go big or go home.
Yeah, I completely support that. And I think that it should be respectfully but clearly stated what the expense is and what the line should be. Secondly, that there is an opportunity. There are still a lot of unallocated funds from the federal ARPA money through the state and statewide planning. There are grants available, so there are ways to do this. And I think we just, to Tricia's point, have to really insist that this is a critical issue for this town and the pressure that it's facing. And if we don't address this sooner than later, it's a significant problem.
Later is going to be
too late.
Too late.
So I hardly agree a more direct
So, well, just a quick comment. The state law fairly recently changed, so now communities are expected to do their comprehensive plan updates over a 10-year time frame rather than a 5-year time frame. So we're not maybe as we have maybe a little more time than we would have had, but I completely agree with what Tricia has said and what Peter has said. But Adam had a question or a comment.
So I was going to echo what they said pretty much, but I think that the bidding process could, I don't know if it's possible for that to start sooner rather than later, just so we have an idea of what those funds would need to be. If we could provide some type of rough.
Well, we've only got we've only got $10,000 in the budget now, and that $10,000 will expire in June.
But why would that stop us from taking bids if we have a longer term plan to get some substantial money?
Well, you could possibly carry forward that $10,000.
Right.
So what you're suggesting, Ms. Gomes, is that we write a letter asking them to restrict our 2022 budget, $10,000, right?
And carry it forward to
Yes.
next fiscal year.
And then add Ms. Hilton's,
With a capital investment, have another.
because then you have $10,000 down payment essentially.
Yeah. Very strict.
Or potentially, we could use that $10,000, given that there are some things that we can tackle on our own. And I'll be honest to what Amanda said earlier, having been on the community comprehensive plan. There's an action item in there that involves looking at the densities, the allowable densities, residential densities in every single zone that we have. That's an action item in the comprehensive plan. I'm not sure that, at least in the short term, in an effort to get the barn door at least partially closed before the horse is long gone, that we couldn't, with a little bit of help, tackle some things like that on our own. And we may need some professional help to do it. We may need some mapping help. We may need a small amount of professional help. We might need a small amount of legal help. Potentially, I think we should fence that money for sure, but we may be able to use it this year to actually, tackle a few of the smaller things in the, or I shouldn't say smaller, but things that are, less complicated, that we can hit as one-off items.
Council members have something.
And so Jay has his hand up.
Well, let me bring this up, and Todd could correct me if I'm wrong. So I got my budget hat on, and the account you're talking about is not currently a restricted account, and that was approved at the FDR. So I don't think you can retroactively create it as a restricted account, nor can you put it in an existing restricted account that was not previously approved at the FDR, like the DPW resolution and all that. So I don't think that'll work. I think what we need to do is create, in the next budget cycle, a restricted account for this purpose, which I'm perfectly willing to try to do. But Todd, what do you think of that?
But we can carry it forward.
Councilwoman Janik has a
Not if
question.
it's not restricted, but it doesn't mean that we can't use what we have.
No, we can spend what there is, but I don't think we
To
can
at least
say,
start it.
I don't think we can say, okay, now it's suddenly a restricted account, so we can keep it.
We wouldn't be able to restrict it until the following budget season.
No, but what we could do, though, if we haven't spent it, but we've allocated it this year, so in other words, even if we haven't actually spent the money,
You can do that.
If it's allocated.
if it's allocated to something that's an approved project, then we get to hang on to it.
You could do
We
that.
can encumber it,
That's great.
right?
But anyway, that's my word of
Yeah, I
order.
think that we like the idea, we just have to figure out how to make it work.
Can we
That's how you do
encumber
it.
it? Can we encumber it?
By allocating it.
Encumber it. Encumber it.
We can if it's,
If it's applied to a particular consultant or somebody.
yes, if we've engaged somebody, or we've signed an agreement, or we've or we've gone out to bid for something, there's a lot of things that would cover that encumbrance, but essentially, then the treasurer holds it until the bill comes in.
What is the timeline when it?
June 30.
June 30? So we
That's when the budget season ends.
That's when the current budget season.
And then we'll
ends,
start a new
when-
budget July, but we'll have the FTR in May.
So we would have until June 30 to encumber
And then
this
we'd
current
have,
10.
and then we'd have to do a resolution on the ballot in May.
Right.
And I don't know
Yes,
how
right.
we would do this, or if it's possible to do this, but it would be very helpful to have some ballpark idea of what this is going to cost.
Well, we asked Ashley Sweet, and she said in the vicinity of $60,000, I believe.
That's what I was thinking, 60, 70,000?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of doable.
Yeah.
We're not talking 250.
Oh, no. And she was actually citing a community like Tiverton that had actually gone through this process. So, but let me ask you this, Jay, because you're former chair of the Budget Committee. Don't
let that impress you.
Can the planning board and the planning department, can we actually commit part of the $10,000, or do we have to get town council's permission or the town administrator's permission to actually commit some of that money?
It's your budget, but if you hire somebody, you have to do competitive bids, correct? Unless you're on the master price agreement.
I'm not sure it is our money. I think it's.
Does it? Well, I'll ask.
Yeah, I
That's
think it
good.
does.
And I've said this before and I'll say it again, it just happened with Northborough. That was going to be 70 grand. We're talking about 70 grand. It would have been a wash. We need to do this now.
Oh, yeah. Completely agree. Okay, where does that leave us? What are the next steps that the planning board and the chair of the planning board and planning staff, what should we do?
It seems to me there are now two steps, one of which would be, to Tricia's point, to identify the easiest, most manageable thing that would help, as she said, start to close the barn door that we could encumber that $10,000 to, so that we understood what that was and to actually request proposals to do that. So I think we have to understand whether it's a density issue or whatever those things are that could be done that are critically important, that we could start the ball rolling now. And then the second piece is, how do we formally, as a board, put forth to the council our request for a significant capital improvement in the next year's budget?
Significant in the next budget and restricted.
Yes.
And that's probably due, the budget process usually starts right after the holidays. In December, the town administrator is going to start working on his budget. So it's not very far away that the planning board would have to present this as, and in my mind, the way to present it is not as the planning board wants this budget as a planning board line item budget, but this is actually a capital improvement. It's a one-time significant expenditure that would come out of capital, which, it is different than asking for your line item thing. But I think the planning board should be thinking about that number and making sure that that is the number, because the council may also have to think about it too, because when it comes to a big zoning change, and there's additional legal work, which I'm sure we may require our solicitor to do more extra work. And then there's things like advertising and notification, which in big zoning changes gets expensive. So the council may have to set aside money in their budget too for advertising and public hearings. But, so I think we should be thinking about that number. I do think, to Stu's point, though, the question that you asked about the planning board's professional services budget, whatever that line item is, that it might be good to go to the council and say, the planning board would like to begin to tackle some of these items in the community comprehensive plan, and we'd like to understand how it is that we access that money in the event that we need some outside professional advice, we need extra legal advice, whatever it is, so that there's some clear direction from the council as to how the planning board can expend those funds and who, if anyone, needs, to approve those expenditures.
When is the
I also do
the
think
budget due?
Pardon?
When is the budget due?
We'll start right after January 1st. I think our first meeting is the first week in January.
It might be that on that December meeting, the planning board needs to come up with a number to hand in.
And then
Yes.
it's finally due in April.
Yes, I agree, and I think I think we can talk to Ashley and Todd. Is there somebody in your organization, in your law firm, who might have a good fix on what it takes? I mean, all of the communities, all of the 38 communities in Rhode Island have to go through this process. And so there must be similar communities out there that have gone through the process fairly recently that would have a good idea of what the budget would
Ashley's
be.
done the process for other communities, so I think she's the best source.
Okay.
To either from her own experience or from contacting other planners or consultants as to a ballpark for you.
Okay, so I will make sure that.
That's my note.
Okay.
Ask Ashley for ballpark.
Ask Ashley for a figure, and then we can take that to town council, not only as a memo from the whole board, but also maybe as chair, I could go actually and be, there, if it's on a town council agenda, and just be a resource person if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask.
You should do that.
Okay. And so we don't need to do anything with this letter.
But thank you, Stu, for initiating it, because
Yeah.
it's led to this
Because
discussion.
it started a discussion, and also it gives us a little bit of background information.
I think
so
there still
everybody-
needs to be a letter to the town council, a 2-pointed letter, asking them how you can allocate your current budget, and 2, asking them to have a capital improvement for the rewrite. Am I correct?
Yes, I mean, I think,
So they
yes.
have something when you then appear.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
You make your
that's
request to
what
appear.
I'm saying, yes.
Yes. I think it,
Yes.
and frankly, you may need a request to be on the agenda, either that or to ask our liaisons to actually, and this would be better, ask our liaisons to put the planning board's capital request on the agenda. And then, obviously, Stu, you would be there to discuss it. And maybe it would even make sense for Todd and Ashley to be there too, so that they get the kind of
The full scope.
the full scope of what really needs to happen.
Okay.
And how much work this is. The one question I have about Ashley, and I've worked with Ashley in the past in my days of conservation, and I just don't know how much time she's had to go through our zoning code, because other towns do rewrites. Other towns do not get as far behind in the rewrites as we are, though.
Yes, they do.
So, really?
They do. Oh, yes, they do.
Because this is pretty tough, a lot.
Hey, Stu, I'll have a talk with Denise Surratt when she gets back off of vacation about the mechanics. Because I think Trish was asking how and when and why can you access.
The other thing we should double check on too, in terms of that $10,000, because and I know this from Grinnell's Beach, because the state law about the $5,000 on having to go out to bid is tied to the Boston CPI, and when we actually looked at it, I think consulting services is up to like $17,000 before you have to go out to actual bid. And I think physical services is like $8,000 now. So some things you can do with you don't have to go out to bid. You have to, I can't remember what they call the process, but it's like you have to get 3 estimates or something, but you don't have to go through the whole hullabaloo of a public bid and all that kind of stuff.
And there's also the master pricing list.
And there's the master price list too.
Yeah.
So if to spend the $10,000 might not be as much process to get there as we might think.
Okay, I think we've got a plan. But the planning board still needs to approve my letter to planning board. To my letter to town council, it's getting late, to talk about the need to put substantial sums of money into a restricted account for the purpose of updating zoning. And then our 2 liaisons will make sure it goes on the agenda of town council. So I can do that. I can bring that letter, I can bring my new letter back for our December meeting. So let's put that on the agenda for December, for our December 6th.
Yep.
Regular monthly meeting, and you can approve it then.
And Stu, as you know, we'll have it out early to you, so if you have comments, you can send those directly to me.
I'll have it out very early.
And comments to me only.
You can get your...
Not to each other.
Correct.
Yes, understood.
Okay.
Good. Yes, okay.
I'll talk to you.
Okay, so I think we've got a deal. Hey, congratulations, guys, on getting reelected, or should I say commiserations?
Rough race. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
So,
Can you think of? Do you want me to stay for the rest of the items?
oh, no, you don't need to. You can go.
We have a standing rule that you can leave.
I wasn't looking at you. I normally look at Rick Rogers and give him the motion that he can leave, but I couldn't see you. You were invisible.
Standing rule, he can usually leave after the applications.
Have a great holiday.
Yeah, you too. All right.
See you later.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can go on to agenda item 3B, which is our annual regular and special meeting calendars. And you've all received that in hard copy or in electronic copy. And is everybody agreed to that? Does anybody have an issue with any of those dates? Of course, we can change those dates later on, but we're required by state statute to actually adopt a schedule now. So since there is no big issues going on, well, we can just make her chairman again. She's listed as chair. So I will make a motion to approve the proposed schedule of meetings for calendar year 2023, both regular monthly meetings and special monthly meetings, keeping in mind that we can change all of this later.
A second for discussion.
Okay, second for discussion. Do we have a
Susan
second?
Gill, or?
You take Susan Gill off of the regular meeting schedule, put today's date in.
Yeah, Ed will take care of that.
We'll make sure.
Because Ed has to submit this to the Secretary of State, right?
Yes.
Once we approve it. So we have a motion to
Just one other
approve
comment.
with this one comment.
One other. Or virtually needs to be removed. We're not allowed to do virtual
That's right.
meetings
Thanks,
unless a
Tom.
new order comes out.
Okay,
Get rid of.
So do you have that, Ed? Get rid of, or virtual, and get rid of Sue Gill and put down Stu Hardy?
And the date.
I mean, don't get rid of Sue, but...
And also put the date in under the approved.
Yes, and the date that we approved it, which is November 15. Okay, thank you, Ed. So we have a motion. I second that motion. We had a discussion. All of those in favor? It is...
No, you made the motion, I seconded for discussion.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I made the motion, and Rosemary seconded it. Okay, so that brings us to agenda item 3C.
Did you do the special calendar?
Yes, we did both all together.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Everything together. And so 3C is the fiscal year 2023 annual budget, discussion and possible vote. And Rosemary, did you want to say anything about this? Because you know more about this than I do. You were chair longer than I was. And you've mentioned to me in the past that that we need to maintain our budget just as a insurance policy in case we need to have funds to cover.
The professional and technical?
Yes, the professional.
The professional and technical account was used for the old subdivisions that we might have had escrow.
Right.
Before escrow came into existence. And also if we have a problem, say with Country View Estates, if we have to go out there or we have to go in to do a survey for something that comes before us, it's been a kind of a carryover. I don't have the backup. If I'd have known, I would have, when we applied for it, we kept it.
So in the current budget that expires June 30th, 2023, we have 2 line items under planning board that we have to agree on tonight. Those line items are subdivision regulation amendment advertising. So when we amend our major land development and subdivision regulations, and we do that ourselves, not town council, but the planning board, we have to advertise and have a public hearing. And so we have been putting $3,000 into the budget to cover the cost of doing that, okay? And then the second item is professional and technical services, and this is where Rosemary was just saying, this is to cover basically engineering costs, costs that our consulting engineer might present to us for following up on subdivisions that where the escrow account has not covered that particular cost. So I'm going to say that we just approve the same budget and request the budget committee to give us the same budget in the coming fiscal year, which is the 2023-2024 fiscal year that we have now in the current fiscal year. That would be my recommendation. We have, the only thing we have used this year is we paid a bill to Steer Engineering of $475.32 to cover some work that Steer had done and that was not covered by an escrow account. I had nothing to do with this. No one consulted me about it. It was done entirely in an administrative way. So, but these things do happen. So I'm going to suggest that we just do again this coming year what we did last year. So to move things forward, I'm going to make a motion to move things forward quickly. I'm going to make a motion to just carry on the same budget $3,000 for subdivision reg advertising, and $10,000 for professional technical services, which is a broad category. We might even be able to use some of that money for something on the zoning update process. But I would make that motion. If we have a second, then that would be for purposes of discussion, and then we can.
I'll second.
So second for purposes of discussion. Now, discussion. Yes, Peter, you had an issue.
First of all, I've never seen a budget for this board.
We didn't actually approve a budget last year.
Okay.
It happened to us. It was never brought to us.
Yeah.
And it just happened.
Last year, Susan gave us a copy, I think it was, or the year before. Maybe
2 years
with
ago.
COVID before, right?
Yeah.
You're right. COVID screwed everything up.
Well,
and it's been the same every year, I think.
Well, it's one of those things that I don't know the inner workings of that. I would never approve a budget that I didn't understand or look at. It's just in my world of governance and management, one doesn't just approve a budget, so I would want to know what. And then also, I think it's short-sighted to say just do what we did before when not taking into account the increase of costs of everything. And so would we, have we spent all of those line items before? What is the average cost of advertising? How many applications or proposals that are going to come before us would require that work? There's so many questions to understand that I just wouldn't feel comfortable understanding.
I think the increase in all the amount, going on to what Peter's saying, and the increase in all the projects and stuff that we've seen, it just seems like it's not decreasing. So I wouldn't think that the budget, how do we know if that budget's going to be?
So let me explain.
Yeah.
The applicants pay for the advertising costs, the mailing costs.
Mm-hmm.
They pay an escrow fee for peer review studies, third-party independent studies. So that's not coming out of these budgets. As Stu explained, the advertising budget would be if we proposed amendments to the subdivision regulations. The professional services fee would be for something that hasn't been used in a long time. So you're concerned about
used last year.
That 475 for steer for some reason. You're concerned about the number of projects increasing. Doesn't matter to this budget. And you're concerned about seeing a budget. It's a $10,000 budget for professional services, as you elect to use, or $3,000 for advertising. I'm a neophyte with budgets, so if there's something more that you're looking for, tell me.
So you're saying that we don't really technically need a big budget over this amount because the applicants normally pay for pretty much everything. There's nothing that really needs to come out of.
The projects are paid for by the applicants. That's how it's supposed to be.
If I may, last year was the first year that we didn't have a detailed budget because it was all combined. Land use went into the building officials. All the salaries went into the building officials' office. Jennifer was the head of the, thing, and that's why we only had 2 line items left. It just came back to me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Do we have a year-to-date spending on those budgets? Do we know where we are year-to-date on this year's budget?
Yes, I got this figure only because I contacted the treasurer's office. I went directly to the treasurer's office, and they told me that nothing had been taken out of the $3,000, hasn't been taken so far out of the $3,000 set aside for the subdivision regulations advertising, but that $475.32 had been taken out of professional and technical services. And I said, for what? And they said, we don't know, but it was Steer Engineering. The check was paid to Steer Engineering. So
the line for that?
So that line item is called Technical and Professional Services. It has $10,000 in it, or it used to have $10,000 in it. It's line item 1070, Planning Board. So I completely agree with Peter. This is no way to do business. We should have more background on this kind of thing before we try to vote on anything. Yes, go ahead.
So, I agree, but I'm going to be a contrarian and say, ask for the budget that you had last year and be prepared to justify it. And I only say this having been on the council and knowing how the budget process works. So, so the land use and subdivision regulations, you know, if we ask for $3,000, what you need to be able to say is, yes, this year we're probably going to be updating them. And I think alone, just the new solar ordinance, right, is probably going to need some new checklist stuff or things. So if you can say to the council, because the way the council looks at it, and the administrator looks at it is, if you didn't spend it last year, do you need it at all? That's the because anything that nobody spends is like, okay, we'll just take it back. But I think this year the planning board might have some subdivision regulations that they may need to look at, and so therefore that advertising money should be there. As far as the other things go, I think some of it goes back to the community comprehensive plan, right? Because if we can tick off some things, if we need, say we need GIS mapping done, right? That's professional service, right? So there are certainly technical and professional services that are kind of one-off, separate than getting our new engineering firm or anything to do something that if we're going to take some of these projects on, it would be good to have money for. The other thing to keep in mind, to remember what it can be used for, and it's never a bad thing, is professional education and development for the planning board. So if, for example, people want to go to the GrowSmart conference, which is a great conference to go to, the registration fee is nominal, but it's still a fee. And so in the past, too, sometimes that money has been used for professional development for planning board members who want to, go, take a seminar or something that's, presented somewhere. So I would suggest, so that we don't lose the budget entirely, that yes, at least for this year, until we have a better idea, ask for the same, but be able to be prepared to say, these are ways that we consider spending.
So, I would amend my motion then to ask for the same thing that we have in the current fiscal year, but instruct the chair to be prepared to testify before the budget committee, giving them specific information on what is coming up in the future that that we will need, and who knows, by the time that they actually get around to putting final numbers on a piece of paper, maybe we will have spent some of that money already. So, okay.
Would it be smart to just ask for maybe more, just because of what we're proposing to start doing now?
I think just, but we do need to justify what we ask for, absolutely. Otherwise, we'll get nothing. So, and we can make a very good case. Of course, that means that the town council has to authorize the planning board to actually go back to work on its subdivision regulations. That process was stopped dead in its tracks.
Just to ask one clarifying question, I'm fine with that, but without having paper in front of me. Is this $10,000 line that we're talking about, professional services, the same that we were?
No, completely different.
Okay,
completely different. It's confusing,
It's like, what line are we on?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we've got a motion, we've got a second. Any further discussion?
Just real quick, so if you were to exhaust the budget, is there like an emergency budget that the council has that if...
They have something...
So it's going to... Business doesn't stop because you exhausted your budget here, right?
Well, the town council does have a fund, and I can't remember, a contingency fund, where they can, if something comes up that was unanticipated.
Yeah, so not asking for more now is not a harmful thing.
Correct.
Should we?
You know what I'm saying? So we're not asking for any more, but we know that this is the pot we play out of.
Yeah,
But if
yeah.
it gets exhausted, we have somewhere to go for money.
Yeah, we do.
But more than likely, it's going to be exhausted, because if we're going to go through with what we were just talking about, we're going to clear it, right?
Not this fiscal year. It's going to take a while. So, okay. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor, just raise your hands.
Aye.
I think it's unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right. And so what process, how do we get this information? Who do we submit this information to?
No idea. I don't know what was done last year. We'll figure it out.
The town administrator usually asks, well, you will get a request, probably from Mary Lou, to submit your...
But who even put this on the agenda? I didn't.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
On this agenda?
Yeah.
Last year, you had this on the December agenda to approve your budget. In your December meeting, you approved a budget of $3,000 and $10,000.
So you just picked that up from last year?
Yeah.
Okay. So who do we...
Just wanted to make sure
Who do we communicate our... We made a decision tonight. Who do we communicate that to?
You're asked. So Mary Lou, if you don't get a request, you should be getting a request from the town administrator for your budget request for next year. They pull all the departments.
Yes, that's right, they do.
And the boards and commissions.
Right.
But it would not hurt, just as a backup, to give it to the liaisons as well, just to make sure. Usually a lot of times what happens is they just take whatever was on the budget last year, and that's the start of the budget this year. But you'll get asked.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'll follow up on that and make sure it doesn't slip through the crack.
I have a note too.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to agenda item. That brings us to agenda item D. I don't have the new agenda, Ed. Where did you put appointing the TRC for the Brookdale Secundit Bay Manor?
It's now.
Oh, it's now. So it's new. It's the new D. Okay, so the new D is appointing an ad hoc technical review committee for Brookdale Secundit Bay Manor. And this is the expansion that they want to do. You know where that is, and you know pretty much what they want to do. But because it's an Article 20 Development Plan Review project, it does require a technical review committee. And I guess Ashley, as chair of that committee, would actually set the date and, and send out the invitations. Does anybody on the planning board care to serve on that TRC?
I'll do that.
Oh, good. Okay, Chris. Does anybody else care to serve on that TRC?
I don't know what it's going to be.
And
If I knew a little bit more about when it could possibly be, then I could...
well, you can go anyhow.
Better.
Ashley won't know until the last minute, I can tell you that.
Is this down for the December meeting, Ed?
It has to be done before the December?
No, it does not. I was asking that to get a sense as to when the TRC may be. So it may be in December.
So let's...
They would prefer it in December, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, we have one member of the planning board. I'm going to suggest that we also appoint DPW director, the building official, the zoning official, the fire marshal or fire chief, and the police chief. So we now have an appointed ad hoc TRC. Does anybody have any further suggestions for membership? I don't think water's an issue, so I don't think Stonebridge Water needs to be involved. Sewer is not an issue. They're on the sewer already. They have their own line, actually. They have their own line. Because they predate the line that we're all tied into now. So I think I've covered all the technical people.
You don't want to put Stonebridge in case
No.
there's an issue with a line?
Well, we could put Stonebridge in just in case they want to come. Okay, let's add Stonebridge. That would be Stonebridge Fire District.
Are they part of the town or are they their own authority?
They're their own authority, but they
We can ask them.
they can be appointed and they can come or not come as they see fit. But they absolutely should be at a lot of the TRCs. Usually they come unprepared. So,
They're always digging up the...
yeah, okay, so we'll add that. Thank you, good catch, Rosemary. So we've got anybody think of any other people, any other town agencies or anybody else know? Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the TRC as I described.
Where's it on here that we're doing a TRC tonight?
It's the new agenda that I don't have.
Okay. I guess I don't have it either.
I don't have it.
I picked one up this morning.
Okay.
I'll second.
So, and was that you?
Yeah.
So we have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion on this fascinating topic, I will call the question. All those in favor? I think it's unanimous. Okay, we now have a TRC for Brookdale, Secana Bay Manor. And so the new E would be approval of planning board minutes. And those two sets of minutes would be October 25 and November 1st.
I didn't do November 1st yet, still working on it.
So we've got October 25, however. And does anybody have corrections to the October 25 minutes?
My last name is with an E, it's not an S.
We keep changing that. The Portuguese do it with a Z, the Spanish do it with an S. So around here, it's probably Z.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay, that's the only correction.
Yeah, I wasn't present.
It's a lifelong battle.
That's,
Yes,
So I will make that recommendation because you weren't present.
thank you. Please change my name.
Souza with a Z, not an S. Hearing no other corrections, I would like to thank Ed for doing this, and I would like to make a motion to approve with that one correction in Amanda's last name. Do I have a second?
I'll second it for you.
I think Chris beat you to it, Adam, so Stu and Chris is seconding it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? It's, you can't vote because you weren't there. Adam can't vote because he wasn't there, right? Were you
No,
there?
he was there.
You were there, okay, you can vote. Okay, it's unanimous except for Amanda not being recusing herself, not recusing herself, but excusing herself. Okay, so that, so I made the motion and Amanda seconded it.
Chris did.
Chris seconded it. I wasn't there.
Oh, yeah, right. I was singing in the one before. Okay, so that brings us to the final item under planning board, and that is, that's the status sheet. I just have one comment to make.
What's that?
One question to ask.
No, they weren't done yet.
And I'm going to blurt this out, even though it may not be particularly pertinent, but some time ago, I was told that there was a meeting with the town administrator, planning department, and the state RIDOT, Rhode Island Department of Transportation, to talk about the intersection where all of the development is occurring. And I never received any information on that meeting. I don't know if it resulted in anything. Did anybody get
I
any
attended that meeting. I told you all I could about that meeting, or everything that occurred.
When?
I attended the meeting with the town administrator, Ed, and DOT. This was back...
July.
Was it July? We provided them with some information. They were going to, what was it, Ed, look at what they could do as to a study themselves for us?
They wanted to know about the developments in the area. They just wanted to know the information.
So presumably they got that information and they just haven't gotten back to us yet.
Correct, so we'll follow up.
Okay, so that I think needs to go on the list for the planning board to follow up on, because, you know...
One thing that might be helpful with that is, and thank you, Ed, and I apologize for not responding to your email sooner about when at our last meeting, we spoke about a GIS mapping project that Ashley was going to look into to look at all of the contiguous sort of projects and the roadways. And so that sounds like it's being put in process to explore what the cost and what that would be, but that would be very important to get to DOT.
Yes.
To share, so if they are considering this issue, or having that information to see all of that in a map.
What they did ask us for, and Ed provided to them, was the anticipated number of residential units on
Each of the
Precasset Reserve, Oxford Development, Northborough. Was there another one, Ed?
There was just the Seasons gas station.
And the Seasons.
That was also there.
At the last meeting, Ed was working on I guess, and I saw part of it, because one day I walked in, and I thought we were going to get a copy of it. Did you finish it, Ed?
No, not yet. It wasn't,
It was,
talking with Ashley, it wasn't really anything that was worth sharing at this point. We needed some more work to it, so.
it was helpful to me, for me to look at.
All right, that's good. That's good.
Well, then you can distribute that
Okay.
to the extent that it's of any use to anyone on the board.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, these visuals, the gentleman, Mr. DeDuca, who handed out that Google Earth visual photograph of the actual site, to me, that's very, very, very helpful. I'm a visual person, and I think we should be getting this kind of thing with all of the applications. And also, when you see that, you see features on the ground that you don't even see when you go there physically. And with all of the technology that Dave Robert has and has made available to the town, the town of Tiverton, or at least the town offices, we should be getting that more often, I think. I know I would benefit enormously by it. You can see stone walls, you can see water features, you can see all kinds of interesting things.
Just out of curiosity, how many people here use the Tiverton GIS mapping service?
Every single day.
I've done it a little bit.
I've only done it a little bit myself.
It would be nice to have a seminar, because I was playing around with it the other day, and I was having a hard time pulling anything up.
So,
I can show you.
I mean, not that I'm an expert in this, but I've used this stuff for a long time. I mean, we could, when we have time, it would probably be not hard. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, but the amount of, how do I put this? The amount of menu options is relatively limited. Like, it's not like it's going to take you a very long time to learn this.
Right.
But maybe it would be a good idea, for one of us to bring a laptop, connect it there, and let everybody see how this works, because it's really not, I mean, me, myself, I've taught, I don't know, half the council and other people over the phone how to use it, where I'm like, okay, do you see this? It's not super cumbersome. I'm sure Ashley's probably really good at it. Do you use it a lot? So I think
It's a little weird on some older operating systems. It can get like some lag and get a little bit confusing. Like the Zoom features don't work all that well. They're not very receptive. Yeah, it's weird. That can get frustrating. But
that is true about it. And it also depends on the traffic on the server too sometimes. Because we essentially subcontract this out to this third party, and sometimes if there's a lot of traffic on the server, it gets a little slow.
That's because it is so detailed.
But it's not that hard to use, and so I think it would be great to put it on the agenda and let everybody have a chance to learn how to use it.
Okay, we'll look for an opportunity to get it on an agenda when things calm down a little bit.
Couldn't we have a workshop instead of a regular meeting?
That would be nice.
Just a tutorial. I've said to Dave Robert, can't you give us a tutorial on this new system he's got in there that I hate?
yeah, and then you give people the option who don't know how to use it to go instead of us all being. It's like I know how to use it, so it's kind of
An optional workshop would be great.
Just a workshop.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be formal.
Would that be,
We still have to be advertised, but-
would people be interested in doing that like on a Saturday morning for an hour?
It's literally 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Literally 15 minutes. We can do an agenda of a workshop immediately following any planning board meeting, or preceding if you wanted to.
I was trying to get brunch and mimosas.
I'm totally burned out. I won't learn anything at this hour of night. But I think that's a great idea. We will think about that and we will follow up on it, because I would love to have some adult supervision on how to use it.
Well, if we did that, and I think Adam's point about having a workshop so people who know how to use it can come there if they don't have to come. But the other thing, we did this once for the zoning board. The other thing too is, if we wanted to, if that's only 15 minutes and we're looking for like another 15 minutes to make it worthwhile, we could always do something like ask Rick Rogers if he'd like to come, so anybody who wants to can ask questions about reading plans and what all the various lines mean.
Oh, yeah.
We did that for the zoning board once, and they thought it was great. So maybe you could combine those two things.
Yeah.
I could use a refresher on reading engineered plans.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they get so crowded that it just really...
I think that's a great suggestion as well.
Maybe that would kill half an hour.
Yeah. Let's work
I was just
on
going to say, in a
that.
related but different, it's so helpful, especially for public hearings, when our presenters actually project their projects instead of having a beaten up signboard that's turned back to the public. It's just, and it's hard for us as well.
We actually did bring that up with a developer once, and kind of said to the other developers that were here, that would be nice if we could, include that in their presentation. So we have approached that with some.
Well, I think we should make it a requirement, is what I was going to say.
I think we're now asking...
Because recently more have been doing that, and especially with Union Studios and those guys, they are. But some of this other stuff is so, and I feel like that cheats the public as well from, it would be a better service. But if we could make that a requirement, that when it comes to especially minimum at public hearings, that they have a projectable presentation. I mean, in this day and age, it's easy to do.
It's definitely easier to
definitely
read when it's up on the screen than a tiny little paper that's so far away. So I mean, it'll be beneficial for everyone involved.
Oh, as we're talking about projects, there's a TRC on Friday for the crematorium.
Thursday, right?
Thursday?
Thursday, 11.
I thought it was...
For which?
The crematorium.
Crematorium.
Where's their crematorium?
Right next to Durant's, just north of Durant's building.
Durant took it over.
Yeah, I knew he did.
What do you mean?
So you know, Durant's, there's all the extra trucks there, and just north of Durant's Auto, not on your end, the other Durant's like
Yeah.
south.
Right across
So
from
that-
Where the barber shop used to be?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
There's a crematorium right there?
There's going to,
Not yet.
they want to build one there.
Oh, crazy.
I'm sorry, I'm really missing this. Did you say this Thursday is the TRC for the crematorium? Which I'm on, but I never got a notice about.
Oh, I thought Stu and Rosemary were the only, I had Stu and Rosemary as the only one.
Are you on North Point, Peter?
I had you on North
Oh,
Point.
North Point, I'm sorry.
What do you got? When is North Point?
We don't have
North
it yet.
Point is not yet.
My
We
apologies.
don't have it
Would
yet.
you be able to wrap this meeting up?
Yes, I'm going to ask Rosemary to make a privilege motion. Our next meeting is December 6th.
Yep.
Okay, so, having said that,
Privileged motion to conclude this meeting at 9:55. 9:50.
Second.
motion carried.